What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Fortnite PlayStation Cup Finals right here. Of course, I'm your host, Miniminer, joined alongside the wonderful Jacob PR. Now, Jacob, we've got EU Zero Build Solo Finals today. I'm personally very excited. How about you?
Yeah, I'm excited as well. Every single time I feel like I watch a solo competition, we find somebody coming out of the woodworks and putting their name on the map when it comes to Fortnite.
Yeah, we definitely do. Now, let's take a quick look at the format going into today. Before, of course, we got to the finals, we had 2 qualifiers all leading into the event finals, of course, today. 50 from each qualifier made their way to the finals right here, right now. And, of course, it is Zero Build, 100 players, and we're playing 6 games today, Jacob.
Yeah, pretty standard when it comes to 100 players and the 6 games, but this is a little bit of a different scoring. You get 75 points, or you get 75 place, you get 1 point right out the gates, but if you look up that placing, it's not until the top 10, maybe even the top 8, to where those points really begin to set in. And of course, you get 2 points per elimination.
30 points for a victory round. That's going to be absolutely huge for these teams, or for the players, I should say. But of course, prizing is where these players will have their eyes on. Of course, first place, Jacob, netting themselves $3,000 today. What a figure.
Yeah, cascading money all the way down, but everybody that participate and made it this far gets at least $100. You got to reward these guys, because you don't really realize, even though there's thousands upon thousands of players playing Fortnite, just to get into the top 100 is an accolade in itself.
Yeah, it definitely is. And of course, a lot of you guys might be watching on different platforms, but for those that don't know, we do, of course, have the PlayStation Esports YouTube channel. So maybe you're watching on there. Hello, if you are. But if you're not, then head over there, have a little look at some of the content on there, some educational content as well on how to use a controller and other things like that. So make sure to check out the PlayStation YouTube, or the PlayStation Esports YouTube channel. It is youtube.com/PlayStation Esports. So make sure to have a little look at that. I think I'll be checking that out, Jacob, making sure I can, make sure my skills are up to scratch.
Yeah, I might need a little bit as well. You saw me. I actually went against Vivid in that box fight tournament not too long ago. It was a little close, but maybe if I had the tips, I would have went against you in the finals.
Yeah, did you win that or did you lose it? I've forgotten.
It was close. It was close. I think one round loss.
Yeah, he lost it. But players that didn't lose it, of course, are the 100 players today that are competing. Let's take a little look at who we are going to be watching. Any names on here that stand out to you, Jacob? Because we have some big names indeed.
I mean, we talked about it already before the show. Skyjump, that's going to be one of the more prolific names on this first page. He has so much experience playing against the best, finals lobbies before, but let's see how he does as a solo.
Yeah, of course, Skyjump's one of those players that has played on console for so long. He is a console player, and he knows the platform incredibly well. Of course, we'll have some players coming from their PCs to play on console, and that's okay as well. We have some keyboard and mouse players, we have some controller players in here as well. Plenty of names to keep an eye on, and this is what this is all about. 100 players going into it, Battle Royale. It feels almost quite vanilla Battle Royale, Jacob, when you see the names on the screen.
Yeah, a little bit, but honestly, like I said in the beginning of the show, even though some of these names might not look familiar to some, make sure you get a pen and paper and write them down, because we might be talking about them throughout the day, going against Jerdy, going against Cammy, and some of the heavy hitters that are known in Fortnite. I think we're in for some surprises today.
Yeah, we definitely are. Some very big heavy hitters, some grand finals players on the screen as well. So plenty of names to keep your eyes on for this tournament today. And of course, you guys at home, you might feel like, you know what, I want to take part in some competitions myself. You can, don't worry. You can compete on the PlayStation website. Just go to compete.playstation.com to take part in loads of different competitions, not just in Fortnite, in plenty of other games as well. And if you need to find teammates for that, if you need to find some friends within the community, then make sure to check out the PlayStation Community Discord. This is a great place to try and find new teammates, some friends as well, and just meet some like-minded people inside of this Discord. Jacob, I'm sure I'll be joining that.
Yeah, I'm definitely joining it. See if I can find some people that are brave enough to carry me to Unreal in ranked at the very minimum. So I'll be checking that one out. Make sure you guys say hello if you guys see me in there.
Yeah, if you see Jacob asking for a duo, then swiftly try and find someone else. I'm just joking. Me and Jacob, we played a lot, and we actually played quite well. But of course, we're not quite at this caliber yet.
Not just yet, but I feel like we're getting there. That's the most important part. And when we are, I'll make sure to sign up and hopefully make it this far. Maybe you see Miniminer casting me for a change.
Who knows? That would be wonderful. But of course, we have to shift focus down now into Chapter 4, Season 4. This is a brand new season of Fortnite. And of course, all these players are going to be competing on it today. We have some new POIs to check out, some new POIs to fight out. Of course, some new sort of mid-game things as well. Of course, we have the forecast towers, plenty of things for teams to be looking out for. What do you think is going to be the most important thing for players to prioritize today?
Honestly, I think it's a little bit of mix. I think it's 1A and 1B. Number one is going to be those sticky launchers. You got to be careful for that new weapon that did get added, and especially in solos. If you become the focus of the lobby, being able to survive that is going to be hard. And then the rocket ram, of course, that is one of the biggest mobility items in here. But as a solo, you don't have your teammate to protect you if you make the wrong move.
You know what I'm excited about? I'm excited about those vaults. Those 3 new POIs. They have the vaults, they have the loot, and because it's zero build, it's going to be interesting to see how these players sort of fight it out at those vaults. Will we see some crazy plays? Of course, we have some mythics as well, potentially being used today. So, you know, some of those new mythics that have been released into this season, I'm excited for that particularly because that's where all the fights are going to go down. Do you like landing at those POIs, Jacob? Are you a fan?
Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of landing at the POIs. Surviving them is a whole different story. But just to get my hands, or at least a chance, on an MK Alpha this season, especially in zero builds, that is going to be basically a one-man army. That's all you're going to need if you end up in that mythic vault. But surviving it is not going to be easy because looking around the drop map, it seems like almost every single one of these mythic vaults is going to be contested today.
Yeah, definitely. We were talking about at the beginning of the show as well. Of course, Slappy Shores being such an important drop spot. So many players. I believe it's 5 players landing there today, Jacob. Do you think that's a little bit of an over-contestation in solos?
I think it is just a little bit, but as solos, I could see maybe some players aren't planning to engage. They're planning to grab a loot if they can and disengage, especially since this season there's a vault added to South Slappy Shores. So there is a little bit worth fighting for than there has ever been before. So maybe I'm going to see some brave and confident players really try to take it to their opposition.
Yeah, and of course, for those that don't know, we are playing Fortnite Zero Build here. So there will be some items in here that you're not maybe familiar with if you're only familiar with the Battle Royale mode. We have, of course, the bunkers that are in the game and, of course, shockwaves that aren't in the regular portion of the game. So interesting items that have been a staple of Zero Build since its inclusion into the game. And I think that's going to be the most important thing. Stacking up those bunkers, making sure you can have as much of those shockwaves as possible in order to traverse the map because it's not easy. When you have those rocket rams, it's not an easy rotate because you just get beamed out of the air by that new assault rifle. And we have to talk about it, Jacob. The Twin Mag, it beams.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where if you got the aim, then it's definitely going to be a threat in your hands. And that's what I said about the rocket ram. You don't have your duo to protect you, especially if you get beamed out of the sky, you land, you don't have the builds, you don't really have any sort of cover. So being able to heal after taking so much damage is going to be tough. And since it is solos, you're just going to get eliminated. You're not going to get knocked. You're not going to have a second chance to come back. You're just getting sent back to the lobby thinking about, man, was that a smart play or was that not? Do I do it again or do I not? You're definitely going to have you scratching your head.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Of course, it's 6 games of finals right now. There's no second chances. It's here and now or never for all of these players. And of course, getting into game 1 here, we're gearing up to get right on the battle bus. What do you think is going to be the most important thing for these players to have in mind? What do you think the most important aspect of game number 1 has to be? Do you think it's survival or do you think it's making a statement?
I think it's a little bit of both, especially if you kind of think a lot of these players may have the build side of things locked up in their brain, being able to adapt and realize there's a different play style, a different sort of intricacies that go into playing zero builds, whether you're playing the outskirts of the zone or simply just trying to get into the middle. You got to be able to adapt and be flexible on the fly. And I think, you know, having that well-balanced gameplay of making a statement and just trying to survive towards the end is going to be important because as you talked about, it's only 2 points per elimination. But most of those points are in the top 10 or even top 8.
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of teams sort of fighting for those forecast towers. That's going to be one of the most important aspects of the game, and it really brings mid-games into a little bit more action, a little bit more life, because we know how valuable those can be, particularly in Zero Build, where knowing where the next zone is going to be absolutely vital, because you can set yourself up, you can put down those bunkers, you can get yourself in a good position before all the other players, or bar 3, I guess you could say, or bar 2 others, will know where the next zone is going to be. So I think that's going to be the most important thing, Jacob. Do you agree?
No, I do definitely agree with that. Positioning in zero builds is so important. And then being able to watch out because you're going to see some bush campers. You're going to see some people hiding in some attics. You're going to see people use any nook and cranny or sort of crevice to try to hide and outsmart their opponent in this game. But one thing I do want to ask you is about the loadouts. Typically in builds, you see a lot of room for, you know, double heals, rocket ram, double weapons. But with a lot of the additions, like you talked about, what would be the mini miner loadout?
The mini-miner ideal loadout. It's tough, as you mentioned. 2 heals is not really possible in zero build. I'm going to be carrying that new twin mag assault rifle, maybe with scope salvo augment, which is a fantastic augment. You can actually increase the damage, decreases the fire rate, but it's a very solid augment. The second shotgun, I'd say maybe the pump shotgun or potentially the Maven. I am actually quite liking the Maven at the moment, so Maven in slot 2, I'm going to say. Maybe even that exotic one as well, which is fantastic in zero build. Then, of course, you want some mobility. Could it be a rocket ram? I'd rather shockwaves. I think I'd rather those because they're quicker to use. They're not as dangerous if you're using them in the air. And you want bunkers. You have to have bunkers. And then for me, the heal, it's slurps. What about you?
Yeah, I got to agree. If I'm not going to take that twin mag and maybe I land towards the Mythic Vaults, MK Alpha is going to be a must. I do like your idea with that sharp tooth shotgun, and Maven is pretty good as well, but we could maybe see some heisted breacher due to the distance and the amount of damage you can put from far away, along with terrorizing those bunkers if they are used. And I do like shockwaves. I think I learned my lesson one too many times that the rocket ram is just not for me. And then, your slurp juice, just like you said, is going to be the must grab peel. It gets HP. It gets shields, but if I don't have a slurp juice, maybe the party time pizza. It had some changes this time around, and it gives you a lot of shields, not as much HP, but it definitely allows you to kind of regenerate a ton of shield in a short amount of time.
Yeah, the pizza's definitely going to be something that I'm excited to see if our players can make the most of today. Of course, it has been buffed a little bit recently as well. And you mentioned party time. It is game time as we get right into game number 1 here of the PlayStation Cup. The EU Zero Build Finals starts now.
Can't wait to see. You already see a lot of the players in a mini-map, in the map on the left, dropping out early. Relentless Retreat, that's going to be the first available Mythic Vault, and then maybe a balance between Eclipse and Sanguine. But as we talked about, Slappy Shores, a lot of teams landing there. Brutal Bastion, plenty of teams landing there. So being able to survive off the solo right out of the gates is not going to be easy for anybody.
Absolutely not at all. It's a very difficult drop spot to land at, as we see so many players distributed across the map, people all over the place. As we predicted, Slappy Shores looks to be quite a hectic drop at the moment. Of course, we already have sort of an idea as to where people are going to land, but that's only sort of, predicted. You never know where people could land. You could actually mark a different spot, as we see Peaky already getting himself a shotgun. Not able to try and connect with one of the players out of the air, as there's so much action off spawn already. That's what Zero Build's all about. And for that player right now, they're on the returning or the receiving end of some fire from Peaky. Of course, that's a twin mag assault rifle. We'll definitely see a lot of that in play today.
Yeah, and just got to remember that there is overshield when it does come to Zero Build. So you basically have 50 extra shields right out of the gate. So Peaky, he realized, just 126 tag. I'm not going to be able to get the rest of the damage. Let me just go on my own. Let me just start to loot up and give myself a chance to maybe get some eliminations later on in the game.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. As we head on over towards Creaky Compound. One of those POIs that is sort of a little bit lower down in the terrain. So you have to be very, very careful for all the teams, all the players that could be lurking in the trees, like we see Cyclone doing right now. But of course, on those snowy areas as well, just gives you a lot of good line of sight. And I think these trees, we haven't really seen too many players using these trees, giving you that elevation, particularly in Zero Build. I mean, in builds, you can't build up there anyway, but in Zero Build, it could be a nice little sneaky way just to get some high ground onto other players. And for Cyclone right now, they're just trying to look to try and heal, or to try and find us some heals, because they're only 30 shield right now. I'm not looking too hot on that department, as we get to have a little look at all the distribution of players in the local area. And of course, down towards the south side, Hyrax up on the north side of the map. Brutal Bastion already got himself one elimination as well, so he's starting strong.
Yeah, he definitely is, but I just want to go ahead and say that having a loop path around those trees is something that you don't see very often, but I talked about this vault. Max is going to be one of the first players down there. You see the bolstering loadout, and he's taking some crash pads, he's taking some shockwaves, making sure that he has enough mobility, because we talked about it, there's no builds. You don't really have time to protect yourself. It's all about thinking outside of the box and acting very, very quick when things do go down.
Absolutely right, yeah, there's so much action at Slappy Shores, and of course at these new locations, not just from the actual players, but there are non-player characters there as well. The AIs are in the local vicinity. I'm not going to mention how many times I've been eliminated to them, but hopefully that doesn't happen for any of our players today. There's Vicky right now just inside of Mega City. This is one of those sort of POIs, Jacob, that you can split. You can take a building each, you can get enough loot to get set up. As you can see on the screen right now for Vicky, this is a solid loadout.
Yeah, and you're already seeing that Vicky is choosing to go for the bounce pads and the bunkers rather than grabbing that rocket ram that he saw a few moments ago. I think it's so those players are realizing how risky it actually is because of the startup, and when you land, it opens up a lot of opportunity to take some damage. And then we talked about that twin mag. You can really go 0 to 100 real quick, and you just get melted away. Even if you survive, you know they're going to try to push to try to clean up that elimination.
Yeah, 100%. That's where fights off spawn are going to be extra important. When do you engage? When do you not? Especially in zero build, if you get caught out in the open, you get caught lacking. That's not going to be a good end for you as we get back on over towards Hyrax. Interested to see how this player does today. Opting for a no shotgun loadout as well at this off spawn situation. Maybe he hasn't found his shotgun of choice, or maybe he's just opting for that SMG, that combat SMG that just is so devastating when you can get it up close to somebody. Marley, though, does have a shotgun. Looking to try and traverse around Slappy Shores. There seems to be another 4 or 5 players in the local area that try and do the same. I'm playing this capture point in the middle. He's actually using a bush right there just to make sure that he can get first dibs at it. The difficulty with this is that not only is he able to, of course, get the loot, but everyone else wants this, and everyone else can hear him doing it right now.
Yeah, if he's able to get this one off, though, then obviously all those enemies in the POI are going to get marked, and that gives him options. It gives him flexibility. Do I want to try to go in, get the eliminations, or do I try to want to maneuver towards zone in a safer manner? But you can see, just like Slappy Shores contested towards the outskirts, some players chose to disengage, follow their loop path, get whatever they can underneath their belt. But Marley, he's happy. He's happy where he's at right now, just going ahead and try to capture that point, that extra bit of loot. He's definitely going to need it when it comes to the heals. Only 1 mini left. That's not something I would want to leave Slappy Shores with.
Yeah, not at all. Of course, there's so much natural heals in Slappy Shores as well, so you'd expect him to use that. And of course, the slurp truck is right nearby, so maybe he'll be able to trade a little bit. Potentially, we'll see some Storm Surge today. We'll have to wait and see. You don't see it too prominent in zero build, but we will have to wait and see. And as you mentioned, 1 mini turns into 4 with the lovely capture of the middle capture point. Actually trying to get this chest as well. It's a really dangerous position to be in because, of course, so many people can look at you, but he gets away with it, gets some shockwaves in the process as well, and is able to escape with bolstered loot.
Yep. You see his plan in mind. You talked about it yourself. The twin mag, the sharp tooth, bunkers, shockwaves. Haven't had a chance to get those slurp juices just yet, but minis are going to have to do him very, very well. And I think it's very, very, interesting that nobody has to kind of farm up and loot up, so it allows for a lot more time to be used to rotate and actually get the loot, the floor spawns, the chests, so that way it's just one less thing you do have to worry about. But this is some of the dangers of landing at a contested POI. Does look like Jan spots one towards the end. Does look like instead of just going all in, he's slowly trying to pounce on his opponent, close the distance as much as possible. That way, when he does finally strike, it is going to be one that's worthwhile.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, particularly in these sort of jungle areas. You can just sneak around. There's this natural cover. There's all of these little trees, little leaves, foliage around. You can just sneak your way through. This is a nice little escape, though, from this player. Luckily evaded the fire of another player, but now he's all the way down on low ground. This could end in disaster, but luckily nobody spotted him right there. Dodic right now, just inside of this similar sort of area, and it seems though a lot of people are just gravitating towards the center of the map. They don't want to have to rotate. You don't want to have to spend too much time in Storm, of course, with Storm Sickness. We'll see some people doing that, definitely on Edge, and try and play that more heal-off style of play. But as the zone pulls south, you want to make sure that you're as close to the center as possible without risking it.
Yeah, especially those teams that are currently at, Creaky Compound, Rumble Ruins. You want to continue to try to move towards the south. There's a lot of open space in the water below Steamy Springs, so it's not 100%, but it really does indicate it is going to continue to pull toward that south side of the map, and you want to stay ahead of the game. Look how congested it's already getting as of now. Now imagine what it's going to be when all those teams that are outside of the zone finally find their position within.
Yeah, you can see them already just becoming the Storm Warriors. We'll see a lot of people doing that today, I'm sure. Particularly when you combine that with the forecast tower as well. You know where the zone's going to be. You can make an ultimate dead side rotation. And pace right now, they look as though they're just getting up onto high as elevation as possible. We see Novus right there, just inside of that bush. In a bit of a sandwich right now, which is not a good situation to be in at all. There's 4 players in this local area, so it's not an easy position for the player in the bush. But hopefully if they can just wait it out as much as they can, it will be okay. And it's all about this higher elevation that is key at this stage of the game. Making sure that you can't get snuck up on, making sure that nobody could do some devastating fire, particularly with these assault rifles. Your game can be over in a matter of seconds, and one mistake could mean the difference.
Oh, he hears something, sees him in the distance, quickly throws down the big bush bomb. Try to shield himself as much as possible, taking an early game fight. As we talked about, it's top 75 who get points. So if you go down right now, you are not going to get anything for your efforts in this early portion of the game. So timing has to be perfect. And a lot of the players and their patience are going to be tested very, very early on.
Yeah, they definitely are. As we see Nipsey on the screen right now, someone that's definitely rose to fame in the Fortnite community recently for solo clutching none other than Archie to an FNCS Grand Finals quite recently, and now he's all on his own, hasn't got Archie to play with him. However you may see that, but now he's got a little bit of solos competition. I'm excited for Nipsey. He's one of the most best aimers, I guess you could say, in the lobby. He doesn't miss. So keep an eye out for him throughout the rest of the day. A top-tier EU player and one that I expect to do well.
Yeah, aim is a huge portion of Fortnite in general, but without being able to build to protect yourself, it's going to be one of the more prolific things that we're looking out for, especially with that twin mag AR. So many players into the distance, some trying to hide their position in the bush, but it's also the same thing when they see shots coming out. Everybody's going to begin to look in that direction. Sofing's going to be the first one, trying to go ahead and take out Alba. Bush is going to get destroyed. A couple of shots are going to get landed, but thanks to that overshield, it gives him a chance at survival.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where you have to think, is it worth shooting out of this bush? Is it something that I need to focus on? Do I need to shoot out of this bush? Do I want to keep myself concealed and ensure that nobody can see where I am? But I think for now, they're just trying to trade some shots. We see Peace right now just actually stacking some heals inside of this bush. If he does get tagged, he can actually heal back up to a good HP and a good amount of health total. So you see a little bit of a bush standoff right now. Who's going to make the first move? And who's going to leave first? And it looks as though the other player does. So Scoping is going to be quite happy with that. Collect that big pot, get on the way, and continue with the game.
Yep, and this is kind of what happened when we saw it was Alba just getting shot out in the bush from multiple positions. He tried to reposition overall and Scoping. And I think that's Vents on the other side. They were the ones who kind of took him down, put it between a rock and a hard place. Easily able to take him out. Scoping. He knows somebody's there in the distance. Being very, very patient, because as easy as it would be to start a fight right now, especially if you have to jump on an opponent, you're so far outside of the zone and there's multiple other players around you, so you don't want to give away your position too early. That's why I said in the beginning of the show, patience is truly a virtue.
Definitely is. That's the most important aspect of Zero Build, making sure you can stay patient, because so many times we see players that try and W key, they try and get too aggressive in mid-game, and then they get looked at by the whole lobby. And you can't build to protect yourself, so it's going to be the most important thing for these players right now to make sure that they can progress through this lobby. Of course, we're in the top 71 players right now, so the Vens are in this situation. One elimination, got that placement point as well, so looking pretty strong. Looking at this other player that could be rotating a little bit later, and we can see the forecast tower key actually just out in the open right there. We can see how nobody's going for it because they don't want to run out in the open. They don't want to risk it.
Yeah, it's too much of a risk at that, and that was one of the things I was pointing at outside the zone. I think eventually there will be an opportunity for somebody to get it if they have enough heals. There is going to be a cache located not too far off from that key as well, so a chance for a lot of heals, multiple slurp juices, and the advantage of knowing exactly where the zone is. As you see in the mini-map, it pulls so far away, so players right now that may not have a ton of heals are going to have to start thinking proactively.
As you mentioned, it's all about that patience. Who's going to make the first move? Who's going to make the right move? And for Venz right now, of course, with the med miss, he's able just to sit inside of the storm a little bit longer. And of course, fourth zone means that the Rift Island shall appear, and it's starting to appear on the screen right now. We can see lots of players just lurking below this. This Rift Island gets quite hectic, Jacob. It's like bees around honey. We seem to see a lot of people going up for it. Even when it gives you points, when it doesn't give you points, the loot on there, it's worth fighting for.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a great vantage point in Zero Builds. You talked about not being able to protect yourself if you don't have that bunker. Well, that's going to be a vantage point a lot of players are going to go ahead and try to vie for. You might see multiple players on different sides of the island trying to shoot down from above. Luckily, I will say luckily for the players down below, it's not in zone. It does pull away. So being able to sit up there, you're not going to have a ton of time. And if you choose to waste all your time trying to get those shots, all those players are going to be positioned in front of you inside of the zone. So it doesn't matter if you travel by foot, use the launch pad, or any of the rifts down below, you are going to become a focus and a target.
Yeah, it's all about the right time with the Rift. I think what I love to do, particularly around these Rift Islands, I don't actually like to go up for them. I like to sort of wait by one of the rifts down below that spawn, and then use that as an easy rotation. You just know as soon as you see where that Rift Island is going to go, okay, that's a free Rift right there, I can go there. And as we see Crooking right now, looks as though he decides to go for that play, or maybe even sitting in this bush and waiting, or is he going to go straight into the Rift? And he does. He uses that to rotate in and get himself deeper into Storm, and depending on his strategy, maybe he doesn't want to. Maybe he wants to try and play on edge. Maybe he wants to try and hold those players that are a little bit later on rotating in. It looks as though Nathan right there on the top of the island, actually able to claim it as well, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Look at that, the accelerant shotgun. That is a beautiful shotgun, a very powerful shotgun as well. I'm expecting to see a lot of eliminations with that today.
Yeah, and luckily for Dayton, he does have the 4 slap splashes. That does give about 60 HP. He's going to be able to regen, which by the time that has to happen, he's definitely going to have the heals from the capture point as well. But I talked about the risk that he's taken as he's firing a couple of shots into the distance, is overstaying his welcome in that island, because you saw him take shots on somebody else that used the rift. Now that position is going to be switched, whether, like I said, he goes down and gets a rift or uses that launch pad to get towards zone. He's putting himself in a tough spot as Danas just tries to rocket ram his way out of there, and we see the first instance of that double-edged sword when it comes to the rocket ram. Yeah, it allows you to cover distance rather quickly, but it makes you susceptible to so much damage so quickly.
Yeah, it really does now for Nathan staying alive, getting those whites, of course, the white heals that can sustain your time inside of the storm for as long as possible. He's able to chill in that sort of department right now. He's seeing him right now. Looks as though he's trying to go for a little bit of a bush battle as well. We saw him with a bunch of heals in the other bush previously, but not quite in this one, as he does get that player quite weak. Looks as though that player's going to be looked at by a lot of different players right now. And that's a really, really nice bit of play right there, because he doesn't get hit, he doesn't get seen, but he makes sure another player does.
Yeah, and he's just quickly thinking, instead of trying to go for an aim duel from bush to bush, he just shockwaves himself out. And I think that's a little bit of a smart play, considering the zone, once again, is pulling away from where they're currently located. So they're going to have to travel nonetheless. For Gacho, though, he's really trying to look everywhere, try to gather as much information. He's being as aware as possible so that no one can sneak up behind him. But eventually, he's going to have to rotate along with a lot of those teams. And this is where it's going to get tough. If you see, there's at least 5 players in his immediate vicinity, and then even more surrounded around him outside of zone and even closer to the zone to where he needs to go.
Yeah, Nathan, though, still on this Rift Island, finally using one of the shockwave, or one of the launch pads, I should say, to get out of the area. And there's still another 2 players either on top or below of the Rift Island as well. They're not getting a move on much quicker. But for Pacenia right now, Gacho, he looks as though he's getting involved in a little bit of battle. What was once such a peaceful time for him looks as though it could all start to boil over. And wow, on the back foot, manages to get a return fire shot. Now has slurp juices to get in. That is a beautiful refresh.
Yeah, he gets his choice of a loadout. He picked up some shockwaves as well. You see he went from the 2 heals down to the 1. It's exactly what we were talking about. You need your 2 weapons to fight. You need the bunkers for shelter, and then the shockwaves, kind of that get out of jail free card, if you could so use them rightly. And right now, he's made the perfect play to inch himself in. We're into the top 50 now. Not a lot of those placement points just yet, but now it's beginning to force a lot of action between a lot of these players that waited so long to try to make it towards the center of the zone.
He can only stay in the storm for so much longer, and for Toxic right now, he's finding that out, but finding an elimination as well. It's Invade who does go down, just overstaying his welcome in the bunker right there. But for Gacho, he has to rotate his way in as well. 2-tick storm, so has to try and find his way in as much as, or as quickly as possible. Of course, the shockwaves could be used here, but he is getting looked at by a lot of different players. If he's not careful, if he's not smart about how he rotates this could be disaster. But look at that, for a bunker, it's not the ideal bunker at all. It's disaster for Gacho, who we followed the whole game. Unfortunately, falls just outside of top 40.
Yeah, played such a solid game up until that point as Tryhard takes down Nipsey, and that's a big one right there, because you took out one of the heavy hitters, one of the superstars of the lobby very, very early on. You talked about how great he is with his pure aim, but Ada is trying to go ahead and continue to get out. The slurp juices pop, the shockwave was used, but it's just not enough. He gets taken out flying through the sky, and now here's Nathan. He has a little bit of distance to cover, but he has more than enough heals to make it from point A to point B without too much of a worry.
Rexy now, they're looking to try and take some shots inside of that bush. You can see on the bottom right of the screen, he's not inside of the next zone, so it would suggest that he doesn't have that forecast tower activated, so he's going to have to try and rotate in a little bit later with the rest of the pack, with the rest of them. at the back with Troll King right there. We see him just on the outskirts. Looks as though they're trying to make a rotate as soon as possible. But Rexy has the time advantage here because, of course, he has all of these white heals. He doesn't have to go in early. Although he doesn't have any mobility, he has, of course, got these whites that can prolong his position here for a little bit longer if he wants to. But no, he says, you know what, Miniminer? I'm not doing what you're thinking you're going to do. I'm going to play it differently. I'm going to sneak. I'm going to hide and wait for this player to come up.
Oh, there's just a nice sneak attack. You gotta imagine he landed the shot. Toxic tryhard. He already has 5 eliminations so far, 10 points off his straight elimination points, and now he knows the player's over on the other side. You see him trying to chop down as much of the cover that player would have, and now he has the choice of a loadout as well. The combat SMG for close range. He has that sharp tooth. He keeps picking up and dropping that twin mag AR because he knows there's multiple players outside of the zone that still need to find their position within.
Look at those bunkers as well. He's got spare bunkers, one of the most valuable items inside a Zero build. He's not just got 4, he's got surplus. He's got plenty inside of his box, and this is a good situation to be in. Unfortunately for him, the zone doesn't quite pull in his favor, but Shockwaves answer that problem immediately, so he can stay here as long as he likes. I wonder if he's going to take that SMG or if he's going to continue to use this assault rifle. I'm excited to see what happens, but just trying to hold off a lot of the players, trying to make sure that the dead side of zone is his. When he rotates in, he doesn't want anyone else to be there, and it's Malabuka right there, someone we haven't seen too much of today, but a fantastic player. No need for any introduction of him. It looks as though they're just going to get on the move right now, Tryhard. I think they're just going to have to shockwave their way, and look at the water. It's going to be treacherous.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be terrible, but I feel like right now, because he has the surplus of those bunkers, he can at least throw 1, maybe 2, depending on how many there, ahead of him in zone, and then that's where he can use to travel, use it as a little bit of checkpoints, check in, figure out how the lobby is, but he looks toward the back. Persistence is key, and he was patient through and through. He finds his 6th elimination of the game. Got to be one of the front runners so far. First, the shockwave going to be used. That's Malabuka on the side, trying to put down the shots, the pressure. Troll King as well, trying to put him as the meat in the middle of that sandwich before he rotates to a better spot. But you can see Troll King, he has some HP heals to regain with that med miss, but it's the minis, it's the shields that he's lacking right now. And if he puts himself in a tough spot, he's going to have little to no chance of survival.
Oh my goodness, he just rotated right through the center of the lobby in the water, unscathed. I'm not sure how he's done it. It's an absolute masterclass. Maybe he'll be able to do it again. Hits the shot, connects with another, and there's an elimination onto Sammy. Could it be the refresh that he needs? No, it isn't. There's no shield there. The thing that he wants most is shield, but he hasn't quite been able to get it, but he adds an elimination to the leaderboard.
Yep, now you see him picking up the bunker, making sure that he at least gets something for his efforts other than those 2 points. He's positioned in front of a couple teams that still have to rotate. And now he's trying to be the gatekeeper within. Knives are just getting bounced back and taken down. A little bit of a misstep, and it cost him everything in that game.
Wow, that is how it goes on the edge of zone. No bunkers, no shield, no nothing to cover himself, and that was unfortunate. But for Troll King right now, he's just looking to try and clean up as much as possible. Still got no shield, but looking to connect with some shots, which he does. It's Leox on the other side of that, who does have some bunkers to protect himself, but no, he won't be protected much longer as Troll King gets his 3rd of the game.
Yeah, now he has to make the decision. Can I go back for the loot? Can I not? He definitely has that med miss, so it's a possibility, especially with so many players getting dropped all around him by his hands himself. He knows exactly where that loot is positioned at, and he's hoping to be one of the last players to try to rotate in. That way, when he gets forced towards the zone, he can see the lay of the land. He can gather all that information and try to pick himself the best spot, but little does he know there's at least one player right above him that's beginning to rotate first.
And there's one player in the lobby that's absolutely dominating right now. It's Toxic Tryhard. 7 eliminations. What a player, what a talent. And we can see it already just on the edge of zone, on the dead side. Nobody's in the local area. For Troll King, his game could be about over, and it's Skyjump who gets his 6th of the game. There'll be no shield on him for the refresh, but for Toxic Tryhard, he doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to him. He's got 7 eliminations. No shield either for Toxic Tryhard. I think we're seeing the result of so many teams rotating in late, so many players rotating in late, having to expend all those heals. Nobody has anything.
Yeah, you even saw a couple moments ago that there was almost like 1 weapon in the loadout. That was the Maven, the exotic one at that. But Toxic Tryhard, 7 eliminations so far, top 14. A good amount of points have been given through placement alone so far, but it's not till top 8, not till top 8. where a lot of those points, half of them in the game, begin to set in. So even if you made it this far, now's not the time to go down. You see the emote, the water balloon going down. He's trying to figure out who is around him, because if you know exactly who it is, just like if you knew I was next to you, you know you'd probably push me.
I would not be. I'd be running the opposite direction. Cyclone, though, unfortunately, will be running back to the lobby as he ends his 4-elimination game. It's Shazen right now that does seem to be getting some eliminations. His first of the game, so looking to actually rotate in with that crash pad as well. It's Skyjump picking up yet another elimination. Finally can get himself some shields as well, and it's Shies right now looking to rotate his way in. Has got that slurp popped as well, so can, of course, heal his way up as he does so, trying to make his way into the zone. The zip line's the play, but there's no cover.
Yeah, he's using every single thing from the bounce pads, the zip lines, to even a tree that has very little HP. Sees a couple players in the distance, lands a couple perfect shots. Does look like he gets the elimination, but no loot for the efforts, and playing a game of ping pong as he's just getting bounced around and finally taken out, as Skyjump is one of the players that reaches the top 8.
7 eliminations for Skyjump as well, absolutely popping off, but Toxic Tryhard says, you know what, I've got one better. 8 for me. Mexa goes down in the storm as well. It's a top 5 situation. Absolutely huge for Toxic Tryhard. Can he put the icing on the cherry, on the cake for his final game? Look, for his first game, I should say. Looks as though he's healing up inside of the storm with the med miss. This is going to be a crucial play. Actually aims the front side of zone as all the other players straggle at the back. We see CNR 1X right there, just on the edge, and this is a difficult play for him. Does he stay in storm? Does he try and pick up a refresh? Does he try and pick up an elimination? This is huge.
Yeah, at least he has the HP. Another aim duel going out. Toxic Tryhard almost going down, just a sliver of HP. But that other player that he's going against is so deep in the zone. He's going to need shockwave, rocket ramps, anything to try to survive. But it's going to be a heal off. Med miss that's almost full versus Tryhard, who has his position in the zone. It's his for the taking, coming down to the very end. But finally, the zone is pulling over. He does himself into the trenches, but going against the high ground once again in the zone. And it's Toxic Tryhard with 10 eliminations to take game 1.
50 points in game number 1. Toxic Tryhard, that is some performance. That's how it's done. Just showing the absolute genius play to go into the storm. Nobody would have thought to do that. But he said, you know what, my name's Toxic Tryhard. I can do what I like. I'm going to win the game, and I'm going to take them by storm.
Yeah, you can see him taking his position at the end of that game, realizing there's no shields. There's not really much to work with. Let me just grab a couple of these med miss, put it in my back pocket, travel inside of the zone, and go around. That gave him not only the position, but the high ground as well. So even with the bounce pads, it just wasn't enough to even contest to put down the shots. As we check down some of the replays, how he was getting himself warmed up very quickly. That was just his 4th elimination. So you know he put in so much work then on out.
Yeah, he really did. And it was all those refreshes that he was able to get which just kept him sustained throughout the game. We never went on to Toxic Tryhard in a scuffed situation. We never saw him without those sort of shockwaves, those bunkers in crucial moments. And of course, right at the very last minute, he had those med miss to get himself the prime position in order to pick up that last elimination and win him the game. It was a beautifully played end game. As we get to see right now, the fight, all the standings after game 1, of course, this is how it went down. This is just the standings from game 1, but of course, it's going to be the standings for everything as well.
Yeah, you see how a couple players, 22 placement points, Elims. You see Skyjump with 30 points as well. He did get some placement under his belt with a 7 elimination. Almost outmatched his placement total in that game, showing that it is going to take a great mix of both placement and eliminations to go ahead and reach the top of the PlayStation Cup finals.
As we get to see some of our other players as well, scrolling down the leaderboard, 21st through 40th. So many big names on there that didn't quite have the games that they would, or the game that they would have liked. Of course, Malibuka in 26th right there. High expectations of him, but no eliminations as of yet. Really difficult zone though, Jacob, all the way down south. Water all around. We saw so many people lacking in shield, lacking in bunkers, and of course lacking in shockwaves. It makes it really difficult.
Yeah, but luckily that is only game number 1 so far. Both of us know it's a marathon. It's not just a race to the finish in one game. So if you had a slip up here, there's plenty of times to figure out what went wrong and try and fix it, so that way you can get those placement points that you missed out on game 1.
Yeah, one of the most important things as well is if you are contested, you now know how this sort of contestation is going to go. You now know how other players around you are going to act. So if you are in this side of the leaderboard, on the bottom end, 0 points, maybe a couple for a elimination, you have to think, you know what, we can improve this. This can be improved. We don't just have to worry too much about that first game as we get to see our top of the leaderboard right now. It's Toxic Tryhard, of course, 50 points. That's nearly double second place, Jacob. That is astonishing.
And you're seeing why. That's pure 10 eliminations versus 2, 20 points versus 4 points off of eliminations. And you're seeing down the line of that leaderboard where it really does make a difference. Once again, you see 7 eliminations coming out from Skyjump. Cyclone has 4 eliminations. So I think a lot of these players, depending on if we get into game 2, game 3, but definitely games 4, 5, and 6, they're going to realize their position on that leaderboard and realize they have to get proactive. They're leaving themselves no choice. So it's games 1, 2, and 3 where you really have a lot of that flexibility, and you have to use that flexibility to get to the top of the leaderboard early, or else you're going to be playing catch up the rest of the tournament.
Yeah, time's running out. If you just joined us, we just had game number 1 of the EU PlayStation Cup Finals. It did not disappoint at all. There's still 5 more games for you guys at home. I'm particularly excited to see how it goes down because, of course, there's so much action to come. Zones are a big factor inside of Zero Build. We saw so much action on the south side of the map in this particular game. Although so many of our teams are landing, or so many of our players are landing at the north side of the map, we saw so many big rotates. We saw so many players that were actually staying inside of the storm, even using that Rift Island there, Jacob. We saw one of the players actually healing up as much as they could to try and take advantage of that.
Yeah, and one thing that we didn't see, I know you're talking about a lot of things that we did see, we didn't see a lot of those mythics in action in that game, so I got to imagine what the randomization was for a lot of them to kind of bypass them. But I'm interested to see if it does appear for some of these people. Do you take that mythic chug gun, or that chug cannon? And then that's the thing that we're going to really be looking at is chug jug. Excuse me, there. Is it worth it in Zero Builds? I got to ask you, Mini Miner, is that something you would put in your back pocket if you don't have your slurp juices, of course, because we know what's number 1 in your book?
Yeah, Slurp Juice is number 1. I honestly think I'd take Pizza over it as well. It just takes so long. It's definitely viable. I think you just have to have those other heals alongside it, right? Of course, the Chug Jug, it takes 15 seconds to heal yourself up. It has a 1-minute cooldown on it. So you could heal yourself up, get shot a little bit, and then you've got to wait like an eternity to be able to use it again. So I think in Zero Build, you want to be quickly. You want to be on the move. You want to make sure you're not getting keyed. You can't just spend half an hour healing inside of the zone because it's not going to go very well. So no, I think if I had the choice, I would not be choosing that, but I suppose it's better than the what's the ray gun, isn't it? That one I'm not a fan of personally, but I reckon maybe Kit's Charged Shotgun. That would be a better one.
Okay,
I like that one.
I like that. Kit's Charged Shotgun. We talked about the MK Alpha. I think there's a lot of different flexibility when it comes to grabbing those mythics, and maybe those players just got eliminated and people already had the loadout that they wanted, so they just went and left them there. We saw a lot of the slurp juices being used. Are you looking at anything to change from game 1 into game 2, particularly out of tryhard? Or do you think he made you play the game as perfect as one can probably play a game?
Yeah, I think Zero Build is one of those situations where it's difficult to stay consistent because it's a lot of zones. There's a lot of dependencies on whether you get bunkers. There's a lot of dependencies whether you get those shockwaves. Your ideal loadout is absolutely vital, but if you can consistently get that, and if you can consistently get eliminations like we saw Toxic Tryhard do, I think you're on for a winner. Getting off to a start like that is very much not easy at all. And I think if I was in that situation, I just want to try and stay calm, make sure that I'm, going to continue that as much as possible. But if I'm on the lower end of the leaderboard, Jacob, what would you do if you were on like sort of top 80, maybe 80th place around that sort of that region? What would you be thinking? How would you approach the rest of the 5 games?
Honestly, it really depends on how I got taken out in that last game. If I got taken down, caught out in the open, I would be looking for a little bit more bunkers, maybe changing up my pathing a little bit to have a lot of that natural terrain to kind of cover. We saw people use the trenches in between. We saw people take the rivers. We saw people use outside of the box thinking to try to get to point A to point B, including looting up in the trees right out of the gate. There is a lot of loot up there for people. It's not something you see every day, but here in solos, sometimes you have to take out some of those tricks underneath your sleeve and use them early in game number 1.
Yeah, that's definitely right. And we haven't really seen too many people using those new heist bags as well. We've talked about some of the new items that are in the game. Of course, the heist bags are a new sort of chest that are inside of those new locations. And there's a few at Slappy Shores as well. They, of course, can give you some excellent loot as well. I believe you can get some shockwaves from there. You can get that new rocket ramp from there as well. So I'm interested to see if players start to prioritize those sort of play styles, because they might have to rotate or incorporate that into their rotate path, because they're going to need those going into the end game.
Yeah, and honestly, as you're talking about that, it popped into my head. We really haven't kind of talked enough about the augments. On the go bag is probably what we're seeing a lot of these players trying to use. It gives you a mobility item, whether it's a shockwave or a bounce pad, because what we do know is rocket rams are not the go-to mobility item in this solo competition. We saw maybe 1 or 2 people use it, and then we immediately saw them get sent back to the lobby because of the startup and the crash down that makes you so susceptible to taking those shots. And that's not even including when you're flying out of the sky. You're testing everybody's aim aim. And so far, a lot of that aim is something that you have to watch out for, because whether it's in the distance or close by, you don't have that cover to defend yourself, so you're going to be gone in the blink of an eye.
Absolutely. Game number 2, though, is ready and raring to go. We see our players already jumping off the battle bus, getting ready to land at their drop spots. Could it be the beginning of a resurgence for one of our lower players on the leaderboard, or could we see a crazy pop-off yet again from the player on your screen right now? It's Toxic Tryhard. I hope so, man. I hope so. Landing at Mega City, seeing all the loot that he was able to get, I'm expecting some big things again.
Oh, this is where I like to land too, at Mega City. There's probably like 4 or 5 chests here if they do all spawn. A lot of opportunity to get yourself built up out of the gate. And you can see him, a Havoc Suppress, a Combat, a lot of early damage that he can put out, including that big pot. So now with the Overshield, he does have 200 effective shield and HP, and he's immediately going for that Vault Boss. He knows exactly what he wants to do with his strategy, and he's executing it very quickly right out of the gates.
I thought that was another player then. I thought he got jumped on by another player, but it didn't quite happen that way. You see Toxic Tryhard just trying to traverse his way around this area. We see a lot of these NPCs, the cameras, of course, those little turrets that you have to make sure you can avoid, because if you get caught out by one of those, not only are you losing HP, of course, you do have the Overshield to heal up. It's more about other players knowing exactly where you are. If you get caught by one of those cameras in particular, you're actually marked for everyone in the local or the general vicinity to see where you are. That's going to be an important thing to try and avoid throughout today. But for Flobby right now, looks as though they're able to pick up another boss. But this isn't just for a regular old standard vault like you see at Slappy Shores. This is the mythic one.
Yeah, let's see. Hopefully we can check out what he's going to choose early on here, and this is where a lot of those NPCs are going to come pouring in. You know, you talk about it as well as I do. I'm sitting there letting my teammates know, yeah, there's somebody near us, there's somebody near us. They look at me strange with a side eye, like, bro, it's just a bot, don't worry about it. Ooh, okay, we see kids charge shotgun or the Stinger SMG. What was your go-to here? I think I know, let everybody else know as well.
I think, you know what, I'd be going for the shotgun there, because the Stinger SMG, particularly if you're on controller, it's got so much recoil that it's really, really difficult to sort of control. And although it does do good damage, it actually only has the same DPS as a gold combat. So you're almost better taking a gold combat because of that less recoil. So for Flobby right now, maybe he's going to bait these. I saw a crazy clip on socials recently. I think it was Nick A30, Cypher PK, and Courage. I think they were acting as some as some statues in here, and then actually eliminating the players that came in. Maybe, just maybe, we'll see a bit of that today. Flobby not quite got the outfit of choice for that though. Maybe he's just going to try and bait it as players might come in. I think if I was another player right now, I wouldn't really be going in there. I think I'd just be saying, you know what, I'm just going to leave it.
Especially when you go down just a little bit, you realize the boss is no longer there. That's one of those high risk, high rewards. If you go ahead and move in, probably going to end up with a fight. But almost in every other scenario, if you were to choose that weapon, try to get out there, there's going to be a decent amount of loot left over in that vault for someone to grab. So you can see why they would probably be eyeing and toying with the decision to go ahead and grab it or not. Over towards Naughty Net, Smithies, we saw him 29 points in second place, down by 21 to Toxic Tryhard. You're seeing how he gets his start over towards Naughty Nets, and it is going to be a hot drop. So a lot of those robots and drones are going to be flying in the sky. That's allowing him to shoot them down, get some extra shield, get some extra HP underneath his belt, so that way when he rotates away from Naughty, he doesn't have to worry about looting. It's all about positioning from there on out.
Yeah, I like this area of the map. I'm a fan of Naughty Nets in Zero Build. You're an island. You can't get pushed and snuck up on as easily. There's some zip lines that people can use to get over, but of course you have the visual cues on that, and of course you have the audio cues as well. I like this drop spot. It's got a geyser nearby as well, so you can actually rotate on out and fly away. So it's not actually on the island, it's just towards the north side, but it's a really nice way to rotate out of here. It's actually only contested by one player, which is Shane, so I'm interested to see how this goes down throughout today. Of course, for Smithies, hasn't got off to too bad of a start for him, but again, that was a southeast zone, so, you know, how is he going to approach the challenge of maybe a north polling zone or a west polling zone? We're going to have to evaluate those potential outcomes later on and see how he approaches those challenges. But so far, Jacob, he's looking pretty solid with the loot. He's got some cover, he's got some heals, he's got some mobility. No shotgun again, but no shotgun, no problem, it seems like.
Yeah, he has a wide open field. Look at the mini-map. There's not a single person in his direct vicinity as of now. They're probably all charged to go to the center, finish their loot path, because luckily for him, over on this side where he's at right now, there's not a ton of loot for players to begin to wander over and try to scrape together something. So for him, there's not going to be a ton of players rotating in this position unless they're probably just trying to use those guys in which you spoke about, which is not too far off from where he's currently located.
Yeah, not too far away at all. This is a nice position to be in. He's already got his loot. He's already got the shockwaves. He can just sit in this position. And we see Troll King right now actually able to pick up an elimination already down here at Steamy Springs, which is actually, you know what, could be an underrated POI now, I think. It's not necessarily that crazy in builds, but I'll tell you why. There's a beautiful new addition to the game that they've actually added recently. I think it was this season. The water in this area actually can heal you all the way up to 200 HP. So you can actually just keep going in there. If you get tagged, you can keep going in there. You have to just jump in and out of it. It heals around 20 HP at a time. I think it's 19 to be exact. And he can just keep healing up. So if he does get tagged here, we might see him go into that water and heal his way up. It's one of my favorite parts about this drop spot. I love rotating through here. You know, you can actually get yourself healed up. And of course, it is a little bit of a lower position. So you want to make sure that, as he's doing right here, making sure he's staying as elevated as possible by going on the buildings. But I don't mind this drop spot. I like this.
Like it as well. Over towards Shady Stilts. So just by judging where the edge of that map is, we are moving south for this game yet again. Just how far south and how far to the west or east is going to be the biggest question that a lot of players are asking themselves. And for Moles, he's taking the C4 this time around. He's ready to break through any of those armored bunkers if they do get tossed down. Maybe even set up a trap. That could be something. I haven't seen too many players do it, but if you can set up a trap with the C4, maybe leave a chest behind, some fallen loot, that could be an easy way to try to find an elimination. But you have to be careful here. There is a player directly right behind him. Another one just north of Shady Stilts, and then all the way to the east, you see even more players. And even though this is Zone 2, the later we go on to this game, the more congested that edge of the zone will be.
See Connor right now looking to improve on the first game performance. The first game performance was by no means bad, of course. A fantastic performance indeed. I like to see the performance from him. I like to see if he can continue that. Also carrying that C4. Very, very powerful item. I don't see too many players carrying it in zero builds. It's one of those where, because there isn't as much builds on the map, players haven't got as much to destroy. It's very good at, of course, destroying those bunkers, but how valuable is it going to be? Maybe needing a refresh endgame, you can chuck them in, but I'm not 100% sure it's actually worth taking it to that stage of the game. And of course, another one we haven't really spoken too much about is those turrets. Those little turrets that you can carry. The briefcases you can actually throw down. It actually attacks some players and hits them for 7 damage, which doesn't sound like very much, but when you're getting shot from all different angles and you have a literal briefcase shooting at you, it's not a very pleasant experience.
You can't even use it like as a little bit of a UAV. You watch one weapon, you let the turret watch the other side, and that allows you a little bit more comfortability as you try to figure out where everybody's going to be located at. And you can see him trying to converge all of those builds and all those resources higher up, trying to figure out what is that loadout going to be. Malibuka, we saw him get very, very far in that last game, but judging by the points, just simply was not far enough. You see his loadout includes those shockwaves and the big bush bomb. He has a couple extra items left over on the floor as he tries to hold on to his elevation, just like we saw Tryhard in that last game. He has the option here to pull out the shotgun, a combat, or drop either one of those and use the twin mag AR. Definitely has a lot of flexibility here early on in this game.
Yeah, of course, Malibuka, one of the finest zero build players in the region, one of the finest battle royale players in the region. Someone that is a very fun player to watch, funny guy to be around. I mean, what can't he do, realistically? He's just insane. Of course, playing with Thomas HD, he's won plenty of recent zero build competitions. I think he's probably one of the most decorated zero build players in the lobby right now. And unfortunately for Cyclone, their 19 points will be all they're stuck on after game number 2 because they've been eliminated. I think it was a little bit of a sandwich. It was Curb and Scoping right there just on the side that we're looking on down. Unfortunately, they got caught out in that position. But for Curb, this is looking solid. I like this loadout. Again, carrying the C4. Is this a new meta we're seeing develop as the tournament goes on? I'm interested to see, but I'm interested, I don't know, is it going to happen?
Yeah, I think there's a high possibility for that C4 to catch somebody off guard. It's all about how you play afterwards, because you know as well as I do, doesn't deal a ton of damage. But from last game to this game, you're really seeing the lack of rocket rams coming through in solos, which I agree, because we saw a player go down. He had a rocket ram, wasn't able to really use it, because either way, it would have been the same end result, but it would have been different if he just had some shockwaves in his back pocket. And speaking of, you know, the different mobility items in this game, Moles is going to do it without any mobility so far. Big bush bomb, armored bunkers, slurp juices to round out his weapon loadout. An interesting take. Especially with Crooking, he's just right there, right close by, and that could have been 0 to 100 real quick with no chance to escape.
Yeah, particularly with that purple combat SMG, it's a fantastic weapon, particularly when someone comes up close. Absolutely devastating for anyone that decides to walk by. For Crooking, only one shockwave, 3 of those bushes, so they are going to be able to get themselves into the zone. Toxic tryhard, I'm seeing in the elimination feed right there, picking up an elimination. Peshko manages to pick up one as well. Another 2 bunkers, I assume, will be there, maybe even 4, but they're saying, you know what? I can't even carry them. I would probably drop the bushes over that, though.
To me, I would either drop the bushes or just chuck them into the distance. That way nobody else can probably pick up those armored bunkers. Because if you go back into the replays and realize you dropped 2 armored bunkers and you lose to someone who had some armored bunkers and you realize he picked them up, it would make me learn my lesson for sure. But timing is of the essence here, especially with the zone closing in towards the south. It does look like it might center up eventually as well, since the last time we did see it. This Crooking is just biding his time. I talked about patience. Moles is nearby with no shields, so it looks like he probably got targeted out, taken down to just HP. Hopefully his overshield can regenerate, so that way he doesn't get the 1 tap from Crooking, because it does look like he's inching closer and closer to danger.
Thought he was out in the open right there, popping those minis, but no. Inside of the building, smart plays. Very a la game 1, no one having white or shield heals. This is a little bit earlier than we saw last time, but Moles does indeed find himself a big pot. So able to pop that, get back up to 200 health. Crooking would have seen that. He would have identified, okay, is it worth trying to fight this player? Is it worth trying to cause so much of a mess around where I am? I think it's worth just trying to play a little bit more carefully. As I see Sky Jump right there going down in the feed, 75th place. So I think he's just missing out on those placement points. Fat team all the way up on top of these buildings. These are such prominent positions when it comes to zero build. If you can get on top of a Mega City building and the zone pulls there, this is almost prime positioning. This is where you want to be.
Yeah, it gets to see a lot of those players rotating in from the southeast and just the overall south portion of the map. Gives you a lot of visibility, just like the island here. This time around, you're going to have some time inside of the zone, so that way you can go to utilize your position. You can see one player already beat everybody else to the punch to try to get on top, but he's taking a lot of damage along the way. Thanks to that overshield, that's going to regenerate. And then the shield fish that he just used has about 90 shields, plus 76 HP. So he's good. He's safe now, especially with those bunkers. But if somebody tries to contest him, he might be on the back foot just a little bit.
Yeah, and it's those rifts that people are going to try and use to try and get up as high as possible. It's Rush that does appear to be trying to get on top of that house, and this is the most important thing to control. When you're on this island, you want to make sure you have the house control, because you can look down on all the players that are trying to claim the actual island, and of course you have visibility on anyone that does decide to try and rift up. So although Alt2 right now does have control and probably will get claimed, or get the island claimed, I should say, he's not safe yet. This is a difficult situation to be in, but of course he does have those slurp juices, so he'll be able to use one of those to heal himself back up. With another player lurking, it's very, very dangerous, especially when Rush is just waiting to pounce.
And you got to take into account, you know, there's a lot of players positioned below you, whether if they take the zip lines or those rifts. Definitely going to be easy to try to close the distance towards the top. And Alt2, since he knows that opponent does have that elevation advantage right above, he's just being patient. He realized there's 71 players. Placement points are beginning to start to set in. I just got to bide my time, especially if he knows. Obviously, we haven't seen every single game from start to this point of his game plan, but if he knows he has Storm Surge in his back pocket as well, it's not going to be too much of a worry, especially being positioned on top of the island. He has a Twin Mag AR right next to him. It wouldn't take him a long time to gather up that Storm Surge as well. So it does look like both of these players that are positioned on top of the island, Rush PCU as well, are just being patient, letting the lobby take themselves out before they make their next move.
Yeah, I respect that. Patience is going to be a word we're going to use a lot today, because that's what zero build is all about, making sure you can have that. Any rash decisions, any quick thinking that is going to cause your elimination is not going to go down too well. And particularly when it comes to zero builds, you really can't afford to make any mistakes. So thinking through them as much as possible, making sure, okay, if this happens, what do I do? If this happens, I go there. If zone pulls there, I rotate this way. Having those contingency plans in your head is absolutely vital. And I think that's what Rush is doing right now. He's not rushing, contrary to his name. He's thinking, right, I'm going to do this. If he decides to try and shockwave up on me, maybe I go back inside the building. Maybe I rotate out. Zone isn't in our favor, but just the edge of this island is. So how are we going to play this? Got myself the bushes. Maybe I decide to drop down. And it's just these sort of plans that the players are making that are going to be most vital. Actually find some extra bushes right there as well. So maybe we'll have to chuck those down on the island. Connor, though, in a good position.
Only about 13, maybe 14 players out of the 68 right now have at least 1 foot inside of the zone.
Wow.
And so it's going to just go to show, the longer you take, the more congested it's going to be, and the harder it is to try to get inside, as Toxic Tryhard has somebody rolling up, and he's going to go on the offensive right away, but a well-placed shot is going to take him down, and now first place, or at least the chance at first place, is wide open for the taking.
Wow, Toxic Tryhard going down, none other than Connor. Wow, that is a statement. That's how it's done. That's what we like to see. And of course, Connor, 4th place after game number 1. So that is an absolutely huge moment in the EU PlayStation Cup finals right here, because now, as you mentioned, Jacob, 1st place is wide open. It's 4th place that gets the credit for it. And maybe he'll be able to go on a whole run here.
That's going to be the hope for him. And you can see him using all of those extra bunkers to kind of build himself, looking like he's playing builds in a lobby versus 0 builds. Multiple angles, multiple sides of cover so he can try to survive at Smithies. Doesn't really have anything to his name. On the edge of zone, a lot of players are going to be watching out. First shockwave's going to be used, and he covers so much distance so quick. He went from high ground to low ground and even found himself a bush to go ahead and hide in just a little bit. This is going to be much needed, but you can see he's not only looking for the players around him, but he's looking for those slurp plants as well to try to get as much of the HP back up as possible.
Wow, what a play. That's, of course, 3rd place after last game. So all our big, talented players actually performing right now, or 2nd place, I should say. As Nathan right now, unfortunately, going down. We saw him on the island for so long last game. Unfortunately, couldn't quite claim it this time. We had the question, is he going to be able to do it? Unfortunately, game number 2 provides us with the answer. It's a no, unfortunately for him. But Nipsey looks as though he's getting on the aggressive right now on this player inside of the bush, or inside of the bunker, I should say, all the way up on top, getting that high ground, but decides, you know what? Let's dip on out of here. Let's disengage. Let's rotate on out. And I think that's the smart play here, Jacob.
Yeah, you don't want to get stuck. Even though you might be able to survive, he does have the med kit. You don't want to end up in a position where you have to use your med kit. You have to use your slurp, and then you have to rocket ram, because you see that's his only form of mobility as of now. I feel like if you're going to rocket ram, if you're him, you do it in zone, you do it early if you're going to rocket ram, but he does see Nipsey in the distance. Choice is his. Well, he's well over 500 above the damage threshold when it comes to Storm Surge. Tries to take a couple of those cheeky shots before he pops that med kit. You know his rotation is going to be imminent, but from one fight to the next, Arahu gets taken down. He tries to make the sneaky play by hiding, but just the lack of HP and shield takes him down very, very early on.
We see Pasca right now just actually rotating on through with this rocket ram. Such a risky rotation when you're in the zone, but when you're in the storm, it's slightly less risky. There's not as many players nearby. It's not quite as much of a challenge if you do get spotted. Of course, a lot of the people that are rotating as well will also want to focus on their own rotation, but this is an important time in the game because, of course, being 6th zone right now, it's going to be increasing in terms of damage to Storm. And for Crooking, he's trying to pop that slurp, but he just about gets it off. That was so close. Having to damage or dodge some of the damage from some of the other players, and unfortunately goes down. The Storm was catching up with him as well. And Kev, finally, we see a mythic, Jacob.
Yes, this is what I came to see. The MK Alpha, the mythic variation. It even makes me look good at this game when I'm aiming down sights. And I'm just waiting to see who he's going to sneak up on. He has 2 shockwaves, but he's deep in the zone, taking a lot of damage. You know that second slurp juice is going to be used sooner rather than later in order to try to stay alive. Does look like he's just trying to find that perfect spot, hide behind a tree just a little bit before he continues to try to rotate in. Luckily, it's not a 10 tick, because if this was a 10 tick, he would have took it way too late in terms of trying to survive. But if you look at his rotation, you look at the mini-map, at least 5-6 people are located there right in front of him, waiting for somebody to get caught out.
Oh.
Wow.
I think that was a misplay.
Yeah, that wasn't on purpose.
Not quite the play right there. Actually just pushing over one of the mushrooms, which sends him flying up in the air. Luckily for him, that didn't result in his elimination, which would have been an absolute disaster looking at his loadout, but he actually uses it in the right way right now, trying to get all the way up, but no, gets sent all the way back down, denied by the mushroom, and now he's going to make the long way around.
At least he didn't just try again, but quickly, 60 damage right off his opponent in the blink of an eye as he continues to travel to bush, location to location. Quickly looks on back. He knows those players he just bypassed are going to have to rotate sooner or later. He's hoping it's him who takes him down and has enough time to clean up that loot, but this is where it's going to get dangerous. You have people in trailers, you have people in bunkers, people in bushes, and then he just throws down a bush of his own right next to so many other players. Very interesting to see who here is going to be one of the last players surviving, especially if the zone does pull away from him.
Yeah, what a play right here. What a position to be in. He's not only just in a bush, he's in between two of more bushes, some more shrubbery nearby. As we see Max all the way up on top right now. He had a solid game in that last game, of course, 5th after game 1. Kev hopping straight inside the box, missing the second, connects with the third, and that finds the elimination. Nice. It is another player inside of there as well, but a fantastic elimination from Kev. We know how important that would be for him to sustain his way through this endgame, and it's Malibuka that goes down to Alex right now. Huge plays coming out here, but now he looks as though he might be getting pushed by Marley, but he has a moment to breathe.
Yeah, Marley Poppy hears and sees the heals going off and quickly attacks to take advantage of it. One extra big pot is going to go to him. Kev gets the double med miss, and that's all he needs to get himself back up to tip-top shape. And that's a huge miracle, because a few seconds ago, we saw him with absolutely nothing trying to figure out how he's going to stay alive, and now he gets zoned yet again. Wow. So the early bushes, the early bunkers going down. I just hope he doesn't get too greedy. Look, you see the slap juice, you see the floppers, you know as well as I do, it might entice some to go for it, but you have to imagine somebody's in that bunker, which there is.
Yeah, there definitely is. I think he's actually just renting someone else's bunker right now, maybe one of the other fallen players. I don't think he had any on his own, so he's just overstaying his welcome slightly, but for the owner, I'm sure they're in the lobby, so it doesn't matter too much. We got Moles, who has 0 eliminations right now, just running on a little bit of loot, hasn't really got too much in the name of mobility, of course, but actually picks up that elimination. That's huge. His first of the game. Lovely stuff from Moles. Maybe he can make it too with all these players rotating towards him. Connor is one of the players to do that, as Marley looks as though he can try and find as many tags as he can. And that was his last bunker of the end game, so he's going to need a refresh soon and as quickly as he possibly can.
See him looking around those EMP grenades. I like what he's doing, using them in bushes. If it tags somebody, knows they're there. It won't do a ton of damage, but 70 with that overshield is a great start to try to take somebody down. I think he just senses Marley's on the other side. He just doesn't know exactly where. If he's inside of the bunker, below it like he currently is, using the bush, there's a little bit of cover as well. And since it does look like Marley's going to have to rotate in a similar direction as Moles, these players have to be careful. Rocket Ram being used to try to get out of there very, very quickly. A very, very brave play, but it cost Connor this game here in 15th place.
He does. Mole's just waiting as much as he can on the backside of zone. He hasn't got any mobility, no shockwaves for him, so it's going to be a difficult rotation for him to make. So many players also in the backside of zone, but he does, of course, have that slurp juice. Kev finally goes down. Rack takes him out, but not before falling himself. It's actually Moles that takes him down at the backside of the zone. Natix trying to get his way in now as well. Max trying to heal his way inside of the storm, but for Moles, he has to try and rotate in as fast as he can. The storm is coming in. His health is running out. Can he do it?
Yeah, he's trying to go ahead and find the elimination. Hopefully there's heals there, and he's going to find 2 different med mists to try to find a way to stay alive. Max just taking a little bit of damage while his slurp juice was pops. He knew zone was coming back, but takes a little bit of damage. Rocket Ram's going through the sky, but Max is taking continuous damage. Somebody else sneaks up on it. Leo's going to go ahead and try to make the play, but he gets taken down due to the stutter on the Rocket Ram. Into the top 4 we go.
What a play. Rocket Ram all the way up into the sky. There were 2 players there for Max. He makes it into the top 4, but his game is quickly and swiftly over. It's Troll King who looks to be on top right now. 1 shockwave to his name. It's a 1v1 situation. He can't find the last player, though. He's just going to have to take this med miss and say, you know what? Let's try and heal it up. But he won't have to heal up for much longer. Extreme goes down. It's Troll King with a 6 elimination victory royale.
Yeah, trying to make up for that lost time. And you know, it was Troll King in that last game. He did pick up a couple eliminations already, so slow and steady is winning the race for him. He finally pops off in game 2 with a victory royale, and that is for sure to boost him up the leaderboard tenfold.
Yeah, I mean, looking at what he had last game, he was 16th place going into this game. So a huge boost in the standings. Of course, we'll be taking a look at those very, very shortly. But what a crazy endgame we saw right there. Almost a very different sort of endgame to game number one. We saw a lot of water. We saw a lot of, or a lack of heals and a lack of mobility on a lot of our players because of the treacherous zones. But because in this zone, there was so much cover. There was so much options, or so many options for so many of these players. We saw an abundance of loot.
Yeah, and there's abundance of heals as well that a lot of players were using in terms of trying to survive. You see some of them dipping in and out of the zone. You saw a lot of the shockwaves not being able to, or not being forced to be expended to cover that water that they did in game one, which allowed them to use them more comfortably here in game two to try to make some game plays happen overall. And honestly, that's why you're seeing such a huge difference between the two games. And with who was it in that last game? It was Toxic Tryhard that went huge in game number one. We saw him go down very, very early here in game two, and I said it, this is the play where he does go down to Connor. It opened up the door for everybody to try to catch up.
It really did, and that's what Zero Bill's all about. One game can really make the difference, and Kev was putting on a show in the end, but it wasn't enough. Of course, Troll King coming out on top. The other player, Extreme, was trying to heal his way up as much as possible inside of the storm. But let's take a little look at how that game went down. Of course, this is the standings from just game number two as we get to relive some of the moments that we saw. Troll King, 42 points coming through on that game. What a performance.
I got to imagine he's in first. I have to imagine, especially with Toxic Tryhard going down very early. We saw him at 50 points after the end of game one, but Extreme in second place, 29 points. And you're really seeing that you don't need a 12. You don't need a 10 elimination game every single game. You just need consistency throughout these 6. And this is only game number 2. We got one more game before that halfway point.
Yeah, we do. It's all about trying to make sure each and every one of these games is as good as you can make it, because every single game matters. We're a third of the way through the event. A lot of these players that are on the lower end of the leaderboard, they're going to need to try and pick up their game. But for the players that are all the way up on top, of course, players that are winning games, those guys are just going to try and keep up that consistency. But it's looking good so far, Jacob. Game number 2 didn't disappoint. We saw so much action, and I'm excited to see the rest.
Yeah, I definitely am. And honestly, you're really seeing the cause and effect, the double-edged sword of that rocket ramp every single time somebody uses it. The majority of the lobby, I think, has smartened up using shockwave, bounce pads, anything else but that rocket ramp. But sometimes you're almost left with no choice, especially if you're deep inside of the zone, that you have to use that rocket ramp to just continue to try to survive. And then you realize it's still in your inventory and you kind of say, why not? Why not? Well, you get sent back to the lobby very, very quickly. That's why not.
We saw the Mythic in use right there at the end. It was, of course, that Mythic MK. We saw Kev using it. We didn't get to see it to its full potential, I don't think. It was a lot of close quarters action. But do you think teams are going to, or players are going to start to try and prioritize those Mythics now? Maybe because if they're on the lower end of the leaderboard, maybe we need to make a big play. Maybe this is something that I need to try and fight for. Or do you think players will try and start to play it a little bit more consistently?
I think it depends on how far you are down on leaderboard. If you're like in the 75 to 100 place on that leaderboard, yeah, you're gonna have to start utilizing anything, including those mythics, to try to pick up those eliminations. You may even switch up your drop spots just a little bit to try to catch somebody off guard. If you're maybe 50th to 75, you do have a little bit more flexibility here in the third game. But if you're still stuck in that position going into the 4th, 5th, or 6th game, you may have to get a little bit more aggressive. I think the players that are currently inside of that top 50, more so towards the top side of the leaderboard, have the flexibility to kind of do exactly what they want. If they want to play aggressive, if they want to play passive, they have the choice because they've earned it after these 2 games.
Well, as I asked, what's going to happen in game number 3? We are about to find out. But before we do so, we need to take a quick break. So we'll see you guys in just a sec for the PlayStation EU Zero Build Cup. Cup. We've had 2 games of incredible action so far. Game number 3, Jacob, is on its way, and I'm very excited to see what happens. I just want to get straight into it.
Yeah, we already seen first place go down early in game 2. Will that trend continue? I'm not going to wish anything on anybody, but I think if first place went down yet again, it opens up opportunity for players, and that's all you need sometimes is opportunity and a willingness to take it when it arises.
And arising right now is game number 3, the halfway point in the competition. Who's going to make their stand as one of the top players in our competition? Which some of our players will be thinking, you know what, let's try and maximize as many points as I can get from this game in order to try and climb the leaderboard. Lots of storylines to break down, lots of action to break down for you guys, as well as Troll King, one of our top players on the day, landing at this sort of area towards the west of Simi Springs. I like this drop spot. It's good. It's a nice little area to go to. And looks like he's instantly trying to get into some activity. It's Dylan all the way over there. Is he going to engage? Is he going to back off? We'll have to wait and see.
I think there's maybe one floor spawn in a chest that might spawn over there, so Troll King, but it's probably looking like maybe I'm going to take my bets, especially if that player does begin to rotate on over here. As Toxic tryhard, we saw him do this before, continuing exactly where he left off, landing towards Mega City, instantly getting a few chests, and then taking on that bot boss to get even more. And he knows all those cameras you were talking about. He said, nah, you got to pay to take this picture.
Absolutely, I would be, because Toxic Tryhard, fantastic player today, and I would love to have a picture. But Leo and this sort of relentless retreat area towards the southwest of the map, quite an uncontested drop spot at the moment in terms of the amount of people that are at relentless. There's only 3 people in the local area, so interesting situation for Leo, but it looks as though he's decided to land at the far west island. That's what it's all about. I like this. Not too much loot in this area, but I think for him it's mostly about being uncontested, being unchallenged at the beginning of the game that's most important.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And you're seeing the loadout choices go down for Toxic Tryhard. He's going to choose to use those slap splashes, you know, in lieu of shockwaves, which obviously is going to be his main mobility. At least he gets the unlimited stamina that he can use to try to run from point A to point B. Quickly gets on out, doesn't allow that turret to target him for too long, but if anybody heard it, they know exactly who's down there and how quick to try to react. The little fight's going to go down. No HP. That was definitely one that he's trying to take the bull by the horns, but with the lack of shield, the lack of HP, he gets instantly taken down, even though it was a surprise attack.
Yeah, fantastic job from Alba right there. It was a tough one, but the other player just didn't quite have the HP to match. As Gaucho right now actually opting just to destroy those turrets because they're very, very dangerous. They start doing damage to you. You can't avoid them, particularly in zero build. You can't build to protect yourself, so I like what he's doing right now, making sure that those are there's not a problem, but gets inside of the vault. What's it going to be? This is always an exciting moment. It's like opening one of your packs or something. Maybe something.
Yeah, I'm about to
what
say,
are you going to get?
You know what he's going to grab. You know it. We didn't get to see much of it in that last game. You said it yourself. Due to the close proximity, he got a couple of shots, maybe 3 straight tags right out of the gate, but from there, he was just stuck rotating. The zone did pull away, wasn't able to really take full use of its capabilities. But Gacho this time with multiple players nearby and himself having the zone and quick access towards the center if he does want to take it. He could position himself quite nicely to try to terrorize and hold a lot of these teams outside of that zone itself.
You know what I love about what he did there? He didn't even look at the other mythics. He didn't even like show us what they were going to be. It's like, I don't even care what those other boxes contain. It's like, you know what? I'm having that MK, and it just shows how that is such a valuable item for these players and what these players are going to be prioritizing today. And he's the lucky one to have it in this game in particular. But that is, yeah, it's going to be a devastating weapon, as we can see throughout the rest of the game. But for Vens, hasn't quite had the most incredible start. 11 points is by no means bad. It's by no means disappointing, but maybe he will be a little bit disappointed if he has those high standards himself. I'm expecting to see some big plays from him throughout the day. Of course, landing at Eclipse Estate as well. I want to try and see him go for those vaults later on, potentially needing a little bit more points, needing to have his loot bolstered. Because right now, 2 bushes, not too bad, but he's going to be wanting to go for those sort of shockwaves and, of course, those bunkers. But play right now, Glove just getting taken down immediately.
Yeah.
Just jumping straight into the box.
Looks like he just got pounced on, didn't know exactly what direction he was coming from. Immediately taken out. And I will say, in lieu of no rotation, I think I would take a rocket ram. Obviously, I'd be very, very choosy in how I would use it. Even if that means taking some storm damage, falling behind, you just want to make sure that you don't put yourself in a bad position, whether on takeoff or on landing or anything in between. And you see him going down below. There is a decent amount of chests here if they do spawn. There's one there. Should be two over here on the other side, and then maybe one in the other door that we did see. So he definitely has a chance to continue to bolster that loadout as a jump aboard Nizer. Landing towards Frenzy Fields, he definitely has a decent loadout himself, particularly that twin mag AR that he has with the 2 bunkers and the shockwaves, plenty of heals. So he does have an ideal loadout. Wouldn't say this is tier 1 by any means, but it's definitely one that's close to the top.
And he's getting those shockwaves there as well, but Nafri identifies there's a player down below, but can't quite spot them out right now. This zipline could be his demise, but only gets tagged up once by Leo. Looks as though it's going to be a little bit of a 50-50. And it wasn't seeming like anyone actually took any damage, as Leo's only taking damage from the storm. Of course, the overshield does recharge, for those who don't know. Of course, you can heal yourself back up, but you only get 50 of it. So you don't want to get that taken out, because it takes a little while to recharge. And for Leo right now, you can see him prioritizing to rotate. And for Leo, it doesn't actually recharge in the storm either, that overshield. So he's going to have to make sure that he doesn't take too much damage, because you're a literal sitting duck out there in the water.
Yeah, especially if you're rotating, even though he doesn't know it, rotating parallel to the guy who just put a couple of shots on you. He knows you're there, so he has the option with the zone pulling in that direction. And seeing it happen from the south, you look at the mini-map here from the north side of the map. We do have a little bit of a south, maybe eastern zone this time around, maybe similar to game number 1. Is Troll King catching the Fury off guard. That's going to be a distraction that is going to be used for Leo in the water to try to survive. Troll King hasn't looked in that direction once, or maybe even looked once, didn't really see anything worth noting, but this is his chance to try to spot him out, and I think that is going to be it. You talk about a sitting duck. Luckily for him, Troll King just has that combat.
Yeah, the combat SMG, it's no good from that range, and Troll King identifies that. There's no point in shooting it. I think a lot of players would have shot there, would have thought, yeah, let's see if I can get a little bit of damage, let's see how much I can get. But it's just not worth it. He identifies. He's a smart player. He knows that he could get looked at by the whole lobby, and wow! Immediately, he gets looked at by the whole lobby as I say that, and Troll King, our game number 2 winner, goes down early in game number 3. Am I seeing a trend here, Jacob?
I think you're seeing a trend that, honestly, maybe a little bit too confident. He got that first elimination. He spotted somebody else out. He's thinking, why would anybody else be out here? Well, guess what? It's scavenging together the loot that does get left behind. The Relentless Retreat Vault. That's where a lot of the players are going to be rotating in from. So it's just very, very sad to see that another first place opportunist does get taken down. But for one man's trash is another man's treasure. There's 77 other players in the lobby that are looking at this as their chance to shine and climb to the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, a lot of players will be seeing that in the feed. Of course, Max being one of them, very high up on the leaderboard. They'll be licking their lips at the opportunity of maybe taking that first place spot. Of course, sat on 51 points right now. Not too far away from Troll King, only 8 points behind him as of last game, so he has to make this game count, and we're definitely going to be keeping close eyes and close tabs onto Max, because this is a crucial game for him if he wants to try and dart up that leaderboard, as he's darting across the lobby right now using these little bounce pads, the Crash Pad Junior, and of course the glider redeploy, the roaming redeploy augment, which you can actually pull out your glider when you don't have any fall damage, when your fall damage is neglected, when you're using a zipline, maybe you're using one of those hot flowers, you can actually pull out your glider, and we see him combining that with the Crash Pad Juniors to actually rotate so quickly and now just sit inside the vault. What a play.
Yeah, with Troll King going down, just to put this in perspective, he had 59 points coming into this one, no placement points being granted just yet. Tryhard had 53 points, so Z-Max is just 2 points shy of first place here at the moment. And that's got to be a boost of confidence, because you got to realize those are 2 game winners from game 1 and game 2, and you're just that close. You're that close from tasting that first place spot. You just have to keep your consistency up from what you had. He's averaged about a 4.5 place, which is very, very good. Some of the highest in the lobby so far.
Yeah, Yeah, very, very solid. And that's what you need in these sort of tournaments. Yes, you can have a good game. Yes, you can have a pop-off. But if you have a game one victory and the rest of them are 100ths, you're not going to be on the top of the leaderboard. And that's the most important thing when it comes to these formats. You have to play consistently. It's good to have a big game, but you have to follow it up with some extra ones as well. For Kaizik, all the way up on top of Creaky Compound, he needs a good game, and he's sat on 4 points right now, unfortunately for him. But set up for success in this particular game. Solid loadout. And Gomez actually taking out Scoping right there. Fantastic elimination. I'm sure that was, because we know how solid this player can be. Of course, 8 points right now, so needing those eliminations as well. Able to find a med kit to bolster this loadout and just give him a little bit of extra time, you know? Make that clock a little bit longer to, in terms of time, to heal his way up inside of the storm. And the time that he can spend in here is so much more increased now. But he has to make his way in at some point.
Yeah, and luckily for him, he did find some heals because the clock was definitely starting to tick before he picked up that med kit. And now the eventual med missed as well. But now he's given himself more than enough opportunity to try to make it to zone. It's still very, very early on, so just 1 damage per tick. So he does have a lot of flexibility to figure out where he wants to try to rotate in. Does he want to go at least towards the east before he goes down towards the south? Or it does look like, though, his choice has been made. He's just going to try to beeline it there. Trying to watch out, gather as much information if any players are going to be positioned next to him or not. And then obviously trying to scavenge together if there's any loot that is left over from any of these players that might have bypassed it.
Trying to scavenge is so important in Zero Build. I doubt he'll find any spare bunkers or shockwaves, but who knows? Maybe he'll find some extra loot. Maybe he'll be able to open one of those hollow chests if he has a key. For Leox right now, not looking like he needs any loot whatsoever. Look at this loadout with 0 eliminations, 6 shockwaves, 4 of the bunkers, great assault rifle, of course, the legendary variant, the Twin Mag, a combat SMG, also legendary, and 2 legendary slurp juices. This is what you want at this stage of the game. He has to just play this right. This is such an important moment in Zero Build because you know that you have the loadout to win the game. You have the loadout to get far, but you have to get there, and that's the most difficult thing.
Yeah, he's kind of hoping that his aim with that combat SMG at close range is more than enough to overtake, you know, the Mavens of this lobby, the Sharp Tooths of this lobby. And honestly, if you can hit some headshots and you can go ahead and do it consistently, it's not going to be too much of a worry. As you can see what he has in mind. He's trying to get that forecast tower with the key. He's going to use the first of the slurp juices to go ahead and make that a possibility. But we got those players that probably took down the boss for the Vault Keep first. They go ahead and target him towards the outside of the zone, forced to waste both of the slurp juices at this point in time, so no heals left to his name.
No heals left. Of course, when you do eliminate these bosses, you do get some slurp juices, but I highly doubt they're still in the area. I don't think they are. As Curve looks as though he's trying to take some damage right there. I don't think they're in that area. He's just going to abandon it. He's going to say, you know what? This is not for me, but no. He's stuck in 2 mines right now, stuck behind the tree, trying to decide, am I going to try and go for this right there? And it looks like the slurps are actually right there. They did actually leave them, so the investment of 2 slurp juices early has paid off for now if he can make it in.
Yeah, that's the big if he can actually go ahead and utilize it. Get in, you will have that forecast. You'll know exactly where zone is. Moles is going to be one of the first players towards the top. But instead of taking position around that capture point, he's just trying to get the loot inside of the building. Brooking is, you know, thinking he's going to get some builds for his effort, quickly chopping him down, but maybe just trying to give him more space to work with. Yeah. Can hug the wall, try to catch Moles off guard. Moles has to know somebody's out there with the capture point being taken.
A little bit of a loft conversion here for Moles. Looks as though he just wants to stay up inside of that loft, but no, he's deciding actually to get into the actual house area. Looks like there are some bunkers inside of the house, so I think that's why he's kind of maybe just baiting them, maybe baiting someone to come in here, maybe just quite happy just to chill here. We've seen the Rift Island be outside of the zone in a lot of the games, but in this game in particular, we're seeing it inside of the zone. They don't have to be forced to move. They can sit here for as long as they like, because how many players are going to be up here? Maximum maybe 5, but right now there's only 1 other player. You're not getting challenged. This is a perfect position to be in because you're so high above the rest of the lobby.
Yeah, and you're seeing a lot of the decisions the players are making, choosing to keep the combat instead of the gold Twin Mag, but no, he doubles back, grabs it yet again, gets the Mythic Infiltrator. He's trying to give himself a huge haymaker opportunity to try to land onto somebody here in this lobby, and immediately goes towards the edge to try to get the information of where these players are at. Is he going to be daring enough to begin to fire shots? Because obviously he knows somebody's behind him, doesn't know his Moles, so he's being as careful as he can possibly be. Keep his back as close to the wall as possible, unless he's trying to go for an early shot.
Just be very, very careful. Yeah, we haven't seen too much. It's the scoped burst SMG being used from this sort of range. Not really going to be able to do too much damage for Abby right now. I just don't see this working out, but I guess they're trying to use as much of that light ammo as they possibly can, healing their way up as well. They didn't hit any damage with that shot, unfortunately, or those shots, unfortunately, but I suppose it was a little bit of suppression fire potentially to try and sort of wade that player away, and I think that player has just decided to disengage and run away. Just that little moment to breathe actually benefited them a lot. So the 5th zone right now, Jacob, it's a difficult position for Abby to be in, because they have to rotate in, try and use as little heals as possible, but also have in the back of their mind that storm sickness.
Yeah, and you can see where the zone actually is. It kind of goes down into a little bit of a bowl. So if you're late to rotate, it may not too bad, because then you have the highest chance at holding on to that high ground position while everybody else is kind of getting pushed into that jungle biome. Others maybe floating over towards the racetrack. They got a little bit of elevation there, especially if they go towards the hill and they pop a bunker down. They give them some options to work with. You got to be careful for those teams in Mega City. I think at this stage in the game, because the zone has centered up so much, nobody really has the advantage of thinking, hey, inside of the zone is safe. There might not be too many players here, because there's so much space inside of the zone where so many players can go and come from, especially if you're one of those teams from Brutal Bastion, use the static launch pads, maybe go from the island. There's a lot of opportunity to try to get surprised.
So much opportunity, and Leox looks as though they were actually able to get out of that sticky situation that we saw earlier alive and healthy. Well, but having to use 2 bunkers is not ideal, but do they have that forecast? Do they have the ability to see where the next zones are? That is almost worth 2 bunkers in itself, almost the entire of his loadout, just to make sure that he can, of course, find a good position, and this is what he's looking like he's doing, actually sitting up on top of this hill, trying to get an elevated position inside of the next zone, and we're going to see if it's going to pull that way for Hyrax, another one of our top talents on the EU region. 2 eliminations for him already, looking to try and get as many more points as possible, not having quite the best start that he would have liked so far, but sitting on an absolute treasure chest full of loot. Yeah,
and he has more than enough mobility to get there. Talked about Brutal Bastion into the island, so he can outlast a lot of these teams with the massive amount of HP heals that he does possess. He could put himself in such a good spot. His bow look fishy, just waiting inside of the bush, just waiting for it to rotate. Finally gets the zone to appear. And now he has to figure out, is this going to be a rotation? You see him going into his mini-map, trying to mark, trying to look at where every nook, cranny, and crevice could be. And then now he's just trying to get the information of where the players are currently located at to see if it's a safe rotation or not.
Curb inside of the storm. This is where some of these storm skirmishes could take place. Just waiting for the perfect moment to pounce, and I don't think he's going to get it. It's a 2-tick storm damage right now, so prioritization here needs to be of rotation, but no, there's players that are fighting in front of him. He has to try and maybe get involved in there or decide to rotate on out. One of the other players decided to rocket ram their way in, so Curb sees that as an opportunity to actually rotate in themselves, finds an absolute gift of a slurp juice just lying there on the side, which is a very interesting thing. Would not have expected that to be there, but Curb could be about to be pounced on by another player. He does get caught out in the open, manages to chuck down a bush, which is going to give him a little bit of protection for the time being. Dodic it is, all the way up on top of the high ground, but Curb hasn't got much time remaining. He hasn't got the time, he hasn't got the HP. He needs to make his way into the zone, but not without some suppression fire from behind. Of course, Storm Surge is now playing a part in this game.
Yeah, if you're low on Surge right now, I feel sorry for you, but it instantly turns off for a moment. At least kind of know where the lobby stands, or you stand in the lobby when it comes to storage surge. Curb's getting taken shots at from all directions, tries to throw the big bush bomb. Shieldfish going down, but there's a huge lack of HP for him to get. He's trying to go behind a lot of this cover, go up and around all this madness, but the shots continue. The HP drawing low.
Wow.
He's barely able to survive. And a lot of those players know how much damage they just did for Curb. He's really going to have to think outside of the box to figure out how he's going to get back from this.
By the skin of his teeth, he has just about gotten out of that situation. That is top-tier quick thinking. He could have just decided to try and run his way in and hope for the best, but no, he has the positional awareness, he has the map knowledge to know, okay, there's a mushroom behind me, I'm going to go back in Storm. Even though I'm weak and it's ticking for 2, I'm going to enable myself to get around this fire and survive a little bit longer. How much longer, we'll have to wait and see, but for Ecliptic or Elliptic Invade right now, they're actually inside of the storm. It's a 5-tick at the moment as well, so the bandages and those 4 or 3 floppers are going to have to be used. Big phase Mongrel right now, actually using this, trying to find a good position actually to try and throw this this briefcase down. Not quite finding one right now for Crook King. Getting another huge elimination. His second of the game. That's how it's done. Look at the refresh he's getting as well. He's not just got bunkers and shocks. He's got spare for his friends too.
Yeah, that was a massive find on that elimination. The points are good, but that loot is even better. And you can see Curve just dealing with almost the polar opposite. A big face Mongrel goes down. That's Kev yet again, who's just putting a tear on the lobby game after game. Crooking being able to survive. We talked about the finding of the loot that he just had. The first of the slurp juices are going to go out. He still has plenty of distance to cover before he finds any bit of safety, but luckily for him, he does have the shockwaves as well. Sky Jump just showing us why you don't use the rocket ram, especially this late in the game.
Wow,
back
he's just
to
got
back.
two. And this is Sky Jump's domain. This is where he's landed for so long. And Crooking right now, of course, we saw it early. He had so many of those spare bunkers, so many of those spare shocks. No friends in this lobby. He's got 2 eliminations. He's in a good position. Of course, he has that bunker, but no, immediately, as I say that, he gets shockwaved out of his safe territory and now looking not so safe as Alex is above. Could be looking to try and shockwave out as well. We saw Kev in the last game popping off in the end game. Can he do it again? Missing his shots inside of that bunker, but no. Falls down. It was an unfortunate one for Kev. It was Dylan who actually takes him out, and now Sky Jump, after picking up 2 crucial eliminations, he's sat inside of this bunker, trying to play it the slow game, trying to play a little bit more carefully because he knows there's someone next door, and they're being quite the noisy neighbor at the moment, and I think they might invade.
Yeah, he gets himself a great position on the next zone as well, proving that you don't always have to be very, very active unless you're going to do something like that. Takes down Invade, gets even more loot for his effort. We saw Squeaks here get a couple eliminations early on. Now he's just trying to figure out where the safety is, how he's going to rotate, because he's just outside of the zone with a bunch of distance to cover, and he knows he's surrounded by multiple enemies as well. This is going to be tricky for him, but Dylan goes down. Pixovsky is going to be able to find that elimination yet again, and being the first to that high ground is absolutely massive for these players' success.
Absolutely massive indeed for UFN right now. Unfortunately, just hasn't got the loot to heal his way up here. Only 60 HP. It's Keon above him. Tries to take a shot onto it, but it's not going to happen. 0 eliminations, 0 way to heal up, an 8-tick zone that pulls far away, and that only ends one way, and it's Keon that takes him out. Fantastic beams with that SMG, and Sky Jump now. We're going to see how he actually rotates this. It's Nipsey that goes down to Altsu, but Altsu has another challenge of his own. It's the zone having to rotate his way in. Can he make it in? He has a little bit of a med miss left. This is going to be difficult for him, and Skeeks picks up yet another elimination.
Yep, sees the loot in the distance, has a chance to grab it, but he knows a couple players positioned right above into the top 20. Placement points aren't at their highest just yet, not until that top 8 position begins to roll in. The Sky Jump just trying to use that bush, a little bit of a crevice, and he gets gifted zone. He can rotate immediately or wait to try to surprise anybody else, as Moles has a little bit of elevation. He has an advantage over a lot of players in this lobby, but he's not even looking to figure out where these players are at. He's trying to figure out how he's going to get up this hill that's right behind him. Pixovsky on the tail end takes down Shane to get another elimination to his total. But just like a lot of players in this lobby, they're quickly running around, just trying to get from point A to point B, so they're not really able to take advantage of the loot.
For Sky Jump right now, he's in the perfect position to actually get front side of the zone, actually drop down to use the natural cover to make sure that nobody else can come down and eliminate him down here or cause any problems. 4 eliminations for him so far. This could be the resurgence of Sky Jump, who hasn't necessarily had that absolute barnstorming run that we would have expected from the console king himself, but what an absolute beam. What a shot out of the air as well. Moles gets sent back to the lobby, and there's a beautiful refresh for Sky Jump. Gets a shockwave. Of course, he also gets one of those bunkers as well, which Pixovsky doesn't have.
And the biggest thing this late in the game that you see everybody's lacking is those exotic slap splashes. Use them very early on, gets ahead of the zone, finds himself the sweep spot. Angle's gonna go down. Leo and Pixovsky try to go ahead and get it for themselves, but only one's going to get credit for that one. Zone pulling back yet again. Pixovsky lacking a little bit of HP, but he gets the sneak attack onto one. Unable to finish it off, but he knows his job isn't done just yet. Another player becomes the target, forced into the zone, back on out, uses the glider redeploy to try to stay alive, ends up in a bush, and finally taken out by Sky Jump anyway.
But that's grief. Sky Jump now back inside of the zone. Unfortunate for him. Pixovsky now flying up into the sky with that rocket ramp to try and land onto Malabuka. Malabuka trying to trade some shots as well. Pixovsky trying to pick up the elimination. Doesn't quite happen for him. It's Zenku who actually does pick up that elimination. It's Crooking now in a 1v1 situation. Crooking versus Zenku. Who's going to win? It is Crooking coming out on top in game number 3. What a shot. That fight just turned on his head, Jacob.
It was down about half HP, ping-ponging around with the shockwaves, but he made it happen. That's something that we're seeing Crooking do game after game, getting more and more consistent with each and every time he lands on the island. Congratulations to him, because we saw first place go down very, very early in this game, which makes it wide open for the taking, or at least for these players to begin to catch up and close that gap.
And again, even when Crooking was on the island, we talked so much about patience. Is he going to try and fight the player that's on there? Is he going to decide to drop down? But no, he thought, you know what, let's just chill up here. Let's enjoy our position right here. And of course, as you can see, it paid off. He was able to get refreshes, I thought, there at the most perfect times. And you could see it, using the shockwaving onto people's heads, making sure that he could get as much eliminations and as much of those refreshes as possible, whilst also maintaining a good position in zone. That was absolutely splendid stuff. And of course, now, Jacob, this is a halfway point. I'm excited to see what the leaderboard looks like and what the standings look like, of course, as we get to have a little look at some of our highlights from game number 3. What a game it was.
No, it definitely was a treat for us at home, and honestly, depending on where these players finish off at the end of this game, it's going to force their hand. Maybe they might have an extra one. Maybe they won't have to do it game 5, 6, depending on where they're at in the leaderboard. But definitely the time to control your own destiny has come and gone. Unless you're, of course, at the top of the leaderboard so far and Crooking. You can see 53 points, 5 eliminations, a game victory. He's going to be one of those players that's probably feeling confident. But it's not enough to feel confident, Vinny. You have to be able to carry that momentum from each game into the next and not go down early on.
Absolutely. On the screen right now, we see the overall standings across our 3 games so far. Topping the table is Toxic Tryhard with his 1 victory and 12 eliminations as well. Fantastic stuff from him. And of course, our game number 3 winner, Crooking, right there, moving his way up the leaderboard with a fantastic game.
Yeah, you can see we saw in the beginning, Toxic Tryhard had 10 eliminations in game 1 alone. He has 12 overall. So even though things have slowed down in terms of him and those eliminations, you still see he's holding on into first place. He's trying to figure out that well-balanced game plan and really execute it game after game after game. But as we go down the leaderboard, you're seeing the lack of elimination, the lack of those placement points. So depending on what has been your downfall so far, you're going to have to make those adjustments. You don't want to leave it to game 6 at the very end to try to bump up the leaderboards and get a little bit more of that prize pool.
Yeah, definitely that's what it's all about. It's all about trying to make sure that you can get as many of those placement points and many of those elimination points as possible. And that's what we saw in that last game. Of course, we saw Crooking trying to do that so effectively well and just continuing that momentum. That's what Zero Build's all about, continuing momentum. If you can pick up eliminations at the right time, you're going to get all of that refresh. You're going to get those shockwaves. You're going to get those bunkers as well. And that's exactly what we saw. We also questioned the taking right there of the mythic infiltrator shotgun when he was on that island. Personally, I'm not a fan of it. I wouldn't take it, but right there at the end, it was that shotgun, the fire rate and the damage of it that won him the game, Jacob.
Yeah, to me, you know, we might all have our favorites, but I think sometimes these players know just a little bit something that maybe we don't realize in the moment, and taking that Rift Island allowed him to get ahead on Surge, allowed him to get those extra heals. So we're really seeing a lot of these players' game plans really unfold right before our very eyes. You're even seeing the forecast towers being worth using a lot of your resources in hopes to gain more. That's something we saw throughout that last game. 2 bunkers, 2 slurp juices just to get the forecast tower. Luckily for him, there was some extra slurp juices left behind because you can only carry so many. So he was able to replenish those and then use the forecast tower to get a high placement in that game.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. I think we're seeing a lot of teams, a lot of players actually not actually going straight for the forecast towers in a lot of instances. So many times we've seen that forecast tower key just lying out in the open. Yeah. But I think what we've identified now is that's not just a mistake. Players know what the value of that item is and what that forecast can give you. I think it's just everyone wants to try and play a game of chess. Who's going to make the first move? How am I going to react to that move? And maybe I just leave that card out there. Maybe I just see if I can pick up an elimination in the process. And there's about 5 or 6 different players thinking the exact same thing. So when everyone else is trying to wait for someone else to move, it just ends in a standoff. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot today, Jacob.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. That is it worth it? How risky am I going to get? And honestly, I expect maybe things to change up just a little bit towards the last half of this tournament. Players making sure that they're willing to take that risk for such a high reward. Having a great spot in zone, especially towards the end of the game, has been crucial. It's been massive for a lot of these players' success. If you go look back at the replays from games 1, 2, and 3, a lot of them were positioned in the zone very, very early on, or they use their mobility, a shockwave, to go ahead and take those positions away. So it's very, very important to be at the top of your game every single time that you hit the lobby.
Yeah, and for players like Leox who are trying to be a little bit more aggressive, going for those forecast towers, this is where things are going to get a little bit different for him, because as more players realize that, okay, I need to try and get a big game here, they will try and fight for those forecast towers. They will try and make these big plays. They'll go for the vaults. They'll go for big eliminations. So for players that are trying to play consistently and get that forecast tower, it's going to be extra difficult for these last 3 games for these players, because it's just going to go crazy. That's what we often see. We see so many players at the bottom of the leaderboard trying to fight it out, to try and grasp as many of those placement and elimination points as they can. And I kind of expect that to happen, Jacob. I think seeing what we've seen in games 1 through 3 so far, I think we've seen a very patient style of play from a lot of players, but I think we're going to see a lot more aggression, a lot more mid-game fights as we progress.
No, I definitely agree with that, especially if somebody feels like they have the upper hand in any one of these scenarios. I feel like they're going to push just a little bit more. But again, something that we didn't see a lot of is the overall usage of these mythics, being able to take over the lobby. I had high hopes seeing the MK Alpha and the Zero build lobby, but it's because of them and those vaults being so far on the outskirts of the island, you're forced to rotate a lot with it. You're not able to get the shots that you want. You're not able to get those opportunities. So I'm just waiting to see that somebody picks up an MK Alpha at a mythic vault that does end up having the zone attached, because then, and only then, you're really be able to hunker it down, build yourself up with those bunkers, or maybe even take one of the castles that are already there and try to hold on to your ground.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, think about it. Game number 1, we had a very southeast zone, and the last 2 games have been quite central zones. So as you mentioned, such a long rotation for all those players that are landing at those POIs. It makes it almost impossible to carry those items into endgame. So hopefully for those sort of players, we'll see some different zones, and maybe ones that are around those sort of POIs. But I want to ask you, Jacob, right? Okay, so it's game number 3. We're going into the second half of the tournament. If you are a coach, or if you're one of the friends of a player that's in the last place position, what would you say to them? What would be your team talk? What would be your motivational words? How would you amp them up? What would you say to them?
I would just kind of let them know a lot of our first place teams did go down early, which means the gap to cover isn't as far as you would think it is in a lot of these games. With 3 games left, you just need 2 games out of the 3 well placed, and that's where you really got to try hard. Does it mean you switch up your drop? Probably so. I'd talk to my player and be like, hey, how confident are you to land here? What about landing here? And beginning to try to switch things up. And then obviously, you know, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I'm keeping the vibes high. You know, maybe putting some music on, some sort of something to get the dancing, get the blood pumping, to let them know, like, hey, worst comes to worst, you at least get something for your efforts with $100.
You always motivated me now. I feel like I'm ready to take on this lobby, which I won't be, by the way. But who is ready? It's all these 100 players jumping right into game number 4. We've seen some crazy action so far. We've seen some of the best console players, the best PlayStation 0 build players going head-to-head. And luckily for you guys at home, and luckily for us, we get to watch even more action go down. Another south to north bust. So let's see how some of these players will go about their business. For Crooking, their business is thriving right now.
Yeah, I'm interested. Can't really see it too much because I don't know where every single individual player does land, but if anybody switched up their drop spot, they're trying to hold some trick underneath their sleeve. You see Crooking kind of going to where we've seen him rotate through a lot of the day so far. This is a spot that I begin to land. There's a lot of opportunity, a lot of chests over here on this side, especially, you know, you can kind of capture a lot of these teams, whether if it's Eclipse Estate or Sanguine, if the zone does pull in your direction. And, you know, I feel like I've seen this before. Toxic Tryhard, same strategy. And that's one thing that you got to do as well. If you're at the top of the leaderboard, you don't need to switch up things, if much at all. And Toxic Tryhard isn't switching a single thing up.
Not at all. Why would you switch up the working strategy? Hang on a sec.
Did Bolster just take down Toxic Tryhard?
Oh, my goodness. He has the key. Oh, wow. That is a huge moment inside of this game, because we've seen Toxic Tryhard throughout games 1 through 3 get that key card, get that vault, and claim it every single game. But as I mentioned before this game, things can shift. Players that aren't doing as well, they will go for bigger plays. For Leox, we saw him going for that forecast tower last game. Maybe that's given him a boost of confidence to do it again.
Wow. That's how you take the bull by the horn, some would say. Really take your game into your own hands. And that's one of the things I felt like a lot of people got to watch out for. He probably was hitting the VOD, seeing Toxic try hard, hit the same drop spot the same way, and do the same thing every single time. So who would think he'd switch it up? Definitely was something that would work once. Let me tell you, it definitely works once, but don't expect that to work multiple times, or at least in the same fashion that it did. Cooking just going around, capturing a lot of that loot. Volkser stealing away that vault. Now all that loot that did go to Toxic Tryhard in our first 3 games is now getting tossed around.
You know what I find interesting here? I like to see the difference in strategy. Toxic Tryhard went straight in there. He didn't actually break any of the turrets or any of the cameras outside because he can use those to his advantage. He can use those to scan out other players that are sneaking up on him, but Volkser decides to break those and then go inside when he knows the coast is clear. I like the difference right there. For Slixy, though, also having to share one of the buildings at Mega City. Lots of activity in this area. You can see in the bottom right of the screen, there's how many players is that? 4, 10 nearly? 10 players in this area, which is absolutely crazy. But for Slixy, he's just trying to take advantage of this game as much as he possibly can because only sat on 1 point. I think it's just been a little bit rough for them trying to get out of Mega City with all of the congestion that's there. Volkser exiting the vault with shining loot.
Yeah, so sort of kind of what you see in a lot of these games to where somebody begins to play well from a certain spot on the map and then other players saying, hey, I want a piece of that pie. You got to realize the grass is always greener on the other side. That when you see one person do it, you got to imagine you might not be the only person in the lobby thinking that as a viable strategy, which makes Mega City now a little over congested, but there is a ton of loot here for, I think, almost everybody to at least find something to gain a footing here in this match. And you spoke about it before. The elevation of these buildings, if they are in zone, is a huge arsenal to use in terms of survival. You can sit on top and get Storm Surge. You just got to be able to play your cards right.
That's absolutely right. For Nafri right now, looks as though they're actually getting the vault. And wow, again, not even taking notice of the Chug Jug. We asked about it, or you asked about it earlier, Jacob. We were talking about it. Would we take the Chug Jug over the Mythic MK? I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that choice makes it a little bit easier. Maybe if we see it next to Gunner's SMG, we might have a different conversation. But I gotta agree with you, the more and more I think about it and how quick these games actually have been going on, maybe you get one usage out of it, but to get it back-to-back in a single player's hands is gonna be near impossible. But the MK Alpha, that's something that definitely packs a punch. And you do get the zone this time around, so if he's able to rotate early, solidify himself a nice spot in towards zone, maybe get some elevation on top of it as well, he's going to be someone to watch out for here in this lobby. And you can see only 9 points so far. He definitely has a big gap to overcome against a lot of these other players. And if you can look out, somebody's being sneaky. Somebody knows that's one of the exits that they're watching out for.
I think this is one of the problems, the reason why we're not really seeing too many players actually exiting these areas with the Mythics, because if we see Skeets right here, he's not letting them leave. He's saying, you know what? You are staying here. You're either getting eliminated and I'm having that Mythic, or we're just going to sit here and we're going to enjoy a little picnic maybe in our separate little boxes or our separate little areas. I'll set up mine, you set up yours. Whoever moves first, I shall eliminate and take that weapon, because I think that's what they're doing. And no, Nafri right now, somehow, I don't know how, he's managed to find an escape and is outside of Relentless Retreat and just evaded the attention of the other player.
Yeah, he's making it look easy here, knowing that the curve on the line towards the zone isn't too drastic towards the right. In theory, he can continue to rotate towards the north, find himself a little bit of a slow side, least congested so far on the map, but it is only zone 2, so sooner or later you're going to meet a lot of the opposition if you continue to play towards the end of the zone. Turdy knows somebody's on that capture point, spots him out even, trying to use the bush as a lot of a cover, but just a simple trade in shots. But thanks to that overshield, Starix doesn't take too much damage. As a drone, look at the drone, say, hey, called me? Probably some heals there for him to grab. Yep, big pot, med kit. Enough to get him into fighting shape, that's for sure.
How modern. That's how we get our deliveries now, apparently. So it worked out in that instance. Certic getting himself a nice big pot, which is actually exactly what he needed. He couldn't have asked for too much better from that little drone. That's absolutely perfect. A lovely delivery for him. But no eliminations so far, playing the patient game. I like how the other player right there used and invested 2 bunkers to actually claim the POI, although he won't get them immediately back. He'll get that loot. He'll get the vision on all the other players as well in the local area. So important for him. And StarX was the player that did that, actually having to expend a lot more resources and a lot more utility than he would have liked, having to use a couple of shot plays there to evade the attention of another player who does seem to be hitting the W key. As we mentioned, so many players will start to be a little bit more aggressive, and StarX looks to be on the receiving end. It's Sadia right now who does try to close the gap. But StarX only has 1 more shockwave to get away. His time is running out if the other player decides they want to continue to keep.
Yeah, he got saved a little bit by that overshield because one of those shots alone would have taken him down with the 24 HP. But Sadia, not getting too greedy, because you know as well as I do, you get too greedy sometimes when something looks like it's fully in your control. It easily gets torn away. And I think with the twin mag and the shotgun, to easily be able to switch between the two, that's a lot of damage that can be dealt rather quickly. And Sadia used that bunker yet again to find some safety. Finally, the turret goes out just in case Geeks wants to go ahead and drop on him. They'll at least know which direction he's coming from, even though it's not a high amount of damage. You got to be grateful for something if the turret's going to help you.
Yeah, the turret just trying to do its job. StarX just about escaping as well, able to get his way outside of that area, as it looks as though the attention has been diverted away from him, which is good. As you see, Cricking in the feed getting elimination, Troll King as well getting an elimination. So 2 of our top tier players in this lobby still alive and kicking. And for StarX, he's actually able to get one of those med mists as well, so he's able to sustain for a little bit longer. Speaking of Troll, this is him right now picking up another elimination, you have to think, and there it is, his second of the game. Jerdy goes down, Troll King sat inside of the bush, and that is Jerdy's game over. And that's the style of play that we can expect to see from Troll King. It's what we've seen all day, being very patient, waiting for the other player to come to him, and then him doing all of the damage instead of the opposite.
Yeah, you're going to see in the top 5 on the leaderboard right now, it is so close together. 61 to 66 points in that top 5. And honestly, we saw a couple position changes on the leaderboard throughout that last. Troll King moved up from 4th place to start the game with the 65 points, moved up into 2nd place, 1 point shy of Tryhard, who has 66 points. Max, you see one of those players we talked about with 62 points. So this game really could make the difference if any of these players go down early. And we talked about, you know, having the destiny inside of your control, forced to make a big play. Well, if you go down very, very early on, you may not be forced to make a big play, but then now you're going to be forced to make multiple plays throughout the game. A Skyjump not only finds 1, but 2 different weapon caches. So the choice is going to be him about how many slurps he actually wants to take in this situation.
I mean, this is perfect. Skyjump landing in this area for a long time. He knows the area so well, and that's absolutely vital when it comes to knowing the spawns of these caches, because knowing where the zone's going to be, knowing where the congested side of the zone's going to be, you can usually predict where these caches are going to spawn. And if you know the actual spawn locations of them, that just makes it that much easier. Sadia still trying to get some damage done, just trying to sweep up, clean up the whole of Shattered Slabs, but the players on the receiving end are not having it. They're just deciding to rotate on out. And as a result, Sadia actually having only 20 shield right now. No shield to actually heal his way up. This is a tough situation. Maybe it's why we're seeing him getting a little bit more aggressive for those eliminations, because he needs something here.
Yeah, even though, you know, we usually talk about a refresh when it comes to mats, but now it's just for shields. He can't seem to find anybody or any shields position, no vending machines that have them around the map. This is where you got to be careful. I talked about attics, 2nd floors, no matter it may be. Sammy's right above him. Being so patient, though, not really taking that opportunity to catch Sadia off guard, which, you know, for some would be a blessing, others would be a curse. We'll see how it plays out for the rest of this game before we make that official call.
Sadia looks as though he was actually going to run away to evade the attention of the player in the roof right there, but actually finds himself only floppers, which is quite possibly the worst thing that he could have got from that cooler box. He needed some sort of shield from that. Maybe a shield fish, some splashes would have done him perfect, but he's going to have to stay in Storm right now. Maybe also scavenge for some loot inside of the Storm with these 2 med mists. This is not a situation you want to be in, because the longer you stay in Storm here, the longer you lag behind your gameplay, you're further back from the rest of the lobby, and you have to play catch-up.
Yeah, it makes it harder and harder to try to survive in almost every single scenario. If you continue, just kind of wait, you let the game kind of pass by. Sooner or later, you're going to have to kind of just take control, get in that driver's seat, and really figure out what you want to do rather than playing reactionary to a lot of the players here in this lobby, because I bet you that's what a lot of our top players in the top 5 at the very minimum are doing. They're going ahead and doing exactly what they want to do, what they plan for a lot of these different scenarios. Some may look like waiting, but other ones, it's just trying to bide for your time. Z-Max takes a couple shots into the distance, forced to use those slap splashes out early, and if he wants to get to his full potential, he's going to have to use the rest of them all together. And even then, it's only 45 more shield / HP that he's going to get, so he's not going to get fully up to 200 shield and HP.
Yeah, really awkward situation right there for Max. This is an awkward one again because he has to rotate in. He's got a long rotate. You can see it on the left side of the screen. But he's got so many players already pitched up around him, just waiting, lurking with those twin mag assault rifles. As soon as he makes a play, as soon as he gets out of that bush, I'm expecting him to get looked at by a few different players. It's all about timing for him here. And the same for Tom. Tom's in a different situation. It's all about timing. Is he going to go up for that Rift Island, or is he going to stay in this situation? Because luckily for him, he's inside of the zone.
Yeah, and he loves those SMGs. He's putting it to use on that player in the bush. Even scaring him out, switching to the twin mag when it matters most, and threads the needle on the last one. Takes him down, 2 more points to his efforts, and now it's his choice if he wants to chase down that loot or not. This Rift Island does spawn in. Nobody just yet making that daring play to try to contest it, but you know as well as I do, at least 2 players will immediately try to go to the top, try to get that loot for capturing the point, but also that elevation to try to fire around the lobby. Even though Storm Surge hasn't really been too damaging here in the lobby, it's at least a thought in a lot of these players' minds.
Max, you see on the left side of the screen, asked the question, how's he going to make that rotation? It looks as though he's made it in a sort of staggered way. It looks as though he's trying to get a little bit ahead, sit inside of this pre-prepared bunker, and then make the rest of the rotation a little bit later. Speaking of bunkers, Bollock Fishy right now. Oh my goodness, 6 bunkers to his name. This is absolutely fantastic right now for him. Looking really good on the loot side of things. Needs a little bit of this health. Does, of course, get those flowers, which do regenerate, but he's not going to need to. There's another one in the local area for him. I love to see that. And for him, he just got to try and sit in the center of the zone. He doesn't want to cause too much of a fuss because he might have to waste some of those shockwaves if he does. Yeah,
I honestly like the fact that he has 6 bunkers here. Typically, I'd be worried about mobility, but if you look, he's already in the center of the zone for the most part. Doesn't really have to rotate. It's just all about staying alive, but a cheeky shot through the bush. Luckily for him, just a little bit of the overshield that's going to get scratched off by Zyklone. Marley in the distance shooting at Connor. A lot of these players just trying to trade shots, scare away their opponent because they have that combat SMG. They know as well as you and I that getting 0 to 100 to take a player out in that distance is going to be almost impossible. So it's just all about getting that damage from Storm Surge. You see the triple pushes going down at the top of the mountain. Everybody's just trying to find some place that they can find some safety at.
Oh no, no safety for Troll King right now. It looks as though someone did break this tree on top of him. So he's got not only other players to deal with, he's got some wood to deal with because there's a tree right next to him. It took away so much of his HP, you have to imagine, with no heals left. One of our top players on the leaderboard, I believe 4th place going into this game. This is a huge moment for him. It looks as though, you know what, I'm not having anything to do with that. I'm breaking it because it looks as though he's just almost ended his game, but luckily he had some splashes to heal his way back up. But he's got another long rotation to make. This is going to be a really difficult one for him. Sky jump, jumping through the sky, using those grind vines. And now finally, Tom loves SMGs. We saw him pick up an elimination with the assault rifle. Now Tom loves the island.
Yeah, for him this means so much in terms of loot. Those slurp juices. I mean, a big pot is fine. So is a med miss, but a slurp juice is just that much better. You and I both know. And now he has the option when it comes to that common SMG. If you can trade it out, even though you may not like the Infiltrator, what would you rather take, the Mythic Infiltrator or a common SMG?
I think you've really got me on that one. Yeah, I'll take the Infiltrator. All right, in that situation, fine, I'll take it. But yeah, I think it's better than the common SMG. But there's not much it's better than. All right, there's not much it's better than in my opinion. It doesn't fit my play style. Let's just say that. But we see a lot of teams or a lot of players now using these rifts. As Tom is just able to sit on this island. It's not inside of the zone, but he can buy a little bit of time. Maybe use some of those slurp juices as well, and maybe try and get some assault rifle tags on some other players, because so many people are going to be rotating into this area to try and use that rift. We see Smithies right now also doing the same, looking at one of those rifts, trying to find the right time and trying to time it to perfection in terms of the rotation. Axa also looking pretty good. He's got that exotic accelerant shotgun. Quite difficult to say, but not difficult to use because so many of these players will be prioritizing that when it comes to the shotgun. Tom loves SMGs. I love how he's actually living up to his name and using an SMG. He's not quite able to connect with too much. Connor, though, on the other hand, is able to connect with a lot, but missing on the next shot. So close, but unfortunately falls is Axa, who does take that shot, and it was only on 1 HP right there, Jacob, that he survived on.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. That just goes to show at this high of a level, whether if it's build or even zero build like we're seeing here, missing a shot's going to cost you so much because he had the upper hand. I like the little cheeky play, ring around the rosy to go ahead and continue to have the advantage, but it just slipped through his fingers just a little bit. And that's all anybody needs in this game is one opportunity, one miss shot for them to turn the entirety of that fight around. Acers is able to heal up just a little bit, even though you only see 50 shield, 60 HP. You add in 50 more thanks to that overshield. So he's definitely not as weak as you would think, but definitely not as tough as Tom here.
Not at all. And Tom switched out the SMG for the assault rifle. I have no doubt that that'll be switched out yet again for an SMG. And yeah, it is. He's actually taking the... Thought he was going to take the common one right there, but no, he decides to go for the purple and then decides he wants to take an assault rifle. He can't quite make his mind up. He's sat at the restaurant right now. He's at the menu. He doesn't even know what he's going to order.
All he knows is he wants to save that med miss for as long as possible. Use a couple bandages. You know he has the slurp juice as well, but he has so much distance to cover from on top of that island. But I like his thought. I like his idea. Wait for the next zone to appear. Because you got to imagine, if you went ahead and got off of that island and then went towards the right, went towards Shady Stills, anywhere that's not in zone, he would have had to rotate yet again. Now he can make it almost in one fluid rotation, barring anybody trying to tag him out of the sky, of course. Z-Max, one of our top competitors in the top 5 so far, has 1 elimination. And those eliminations, what he used, and it tries to close the gap in motion. With the shockwaves being used, he has to be able to find some mobility sooner rather than later, because right now he's fresh out and he doesn't have a bunker to his name to really crowd and shout himself. Oh man, Rock go ahead and uses the rocket ram to get into the zone. It spots somebody else trying to use it to get out, and that's where he finds another elimination.
Just about getting that elimination. Troll King just about avoiding the shots from all these other players. Max able to use the bushes. We saw him have some really treacherous rotations, but somehow he's made it in. Somehow, some way, is another player nearby as well. He's got lots of people in the close area. He's got to be very, very careful of. Does, of course, have that SMG, as, of course, got the legendary shotgun as well, so he can deal some crazy damage. But he has pulled zone here, Jacob. This is a huge position for him to be in because he doesn't have to move. But no, in the process of breaking the tree, he breaks his own bush and has to resort to using someone else's.
Oh, talk about using someone else's.
Wow.
He tried to steal that one away from Acers, but we saw him use a lot of his shockwaves early on to get to this point. Now a lot of his heals, his bushes are gone as well. Trying to spot out Marley in the distance. He knows he's there. Thanks to that bush, he doesn't know exactly where he's positioned at, and there's 2 more players right above him in bunkers of their own, so he has to be very, very careful in terms of survival. Troll King, same thing could be said for him, but there's not as much opposition in close proximity.
Not as much at all. Sky Jump has got the extra slurp, so he can play a little bit more further back here. It looks like he's trying to fight against Troll King, so it's Bush versus Bunker. Who's going to come out on top? Troll King taking the damage at the moment. Looks as though he's getting tagged up quite a lot by Sky Jump, who can, of course, heal up if he does get tagged. For Troll King, he's going to have to rely on his overshield as just about the only shield that he's going to have. 1 elimination from Malibu can make that 2. It's Rush who does go down to him, able to keep going through this game. We haven't really seen too much from Malibukas as of yet, and Troll King we won't see too much more of as he's out of the game. Sky Jump actually just able to stay a little bit further back and try and take out more players that are coming in. It's FaZe who does try and make his way in, but is unsuccessful, denied by Sky Jump.
Yep, Sky Jump trying to make a claim for that first place spot. Malibuka going on over to that loot. The elimination he just got moments ago, he's able to grant himself at least a little bit of a shockwave. The EMP grenade going down, taking down some of Malibuka's shields, forcing out a slap splash early on, but I think Malibuka's one of those players to know to not make any panic plays very, very early on, because he could have easily tried to shockwave on out, but that would have put him in another danger zone. He's waiting for this one to close. Next zone does appear, and now he's trying to formulate some sort of strategy. He's on some of the lowest position in the game right now, and he has to figure out how he's going to gain that elevation.
King, though, our game number 3 winner, a player that we're definitely keeping an eye on throughout the whole of the day, has potential to pop off again, going for that infiltrator shotgun, so maybe we'll see another crazy pop off from him at the end there. Pixovsky, who we've seen absolutely beam people with that crazy twin mag assault rifle. Will he be able to use it again? Widely considered and widely regarded as one of the best console players is Pixovsky. So we'll see if he can continue to live up to that name with a decent points at the moment. Alba down below. He's going to be very, very careful as to how he approaches this. No shotgun again for this player. He actually does get some tags onto the player down below. And Crooking also in a bush. Who's going to move first? This is where things get a little bit difficult for him because he can see there's so many players ahead of him. He does have shockwaves, he only has one bush, but this rotation is absolutely key in not just this game, but you have to think his whole tournament as well.
Yeah, and does he know Hyrax is right behind him? Malibuka rotating in the same direction as well. Quickly tries to bunker, but doesn't get the most out of it. Most of it goes underground, and Malibuka, I feel like I can hear him screaming from here, but now it's Crooking's turn to kind of rotate on in. I like the way he didn't drop all the way down. He kept as much elevation as possible before dropping that big bush bomb. That's got to be a trick underneath his sleeve as he's looking to climb up the leaderboard even more. Top 15 with even more points to go. Z-Max as well, trying to make a claim for that first place. He's definitely one that's in contention for it as well.
Pixovsky also in contention for it, looking to try and use these EMP grenades for his advantage. Of course, it's not going to do any damage to the white HP, but he can, of course, do it with his assault rifle if he can connect with two of these shots. 42, 42, 42 is enough, and Cyclone does get taken out right there. Could he actually go to that loot? Is he going to try and play for that, or is he going to think, you know what, I'll keep my position here. I'll enjoy this position in zone. I think he's going to have to as the zone continues to move. Fishy right now, going down, trying to enter into that bunker, but it's Scoping that says no thank you. Pixovsky all the way up on top. He's in the prime position right now, Jacob.
Yeah, he got the turret going down, just being a little bit of annoyance to players. We talked about the lack of damage that it actually has, which is huge. Pixovsky just trying to go ahead and heal up, regenerate himself, and reposition just a little bit before he goes on the offensive once more. Gets a little bit of those EMP grenades, able to use them if players do get close, but it's him who has to move and rotate on out. But he's trying to lead the charge, set the ground, set the stage with some big bush bombs, even terrorize some of those bunkers to try to make sure nobody has a safe spot inside of the zone. Crooking going from point A to point B. Luckily for him, he has a little bit of a med mist in his back pocket. Not enough to get him to full HP, but it's definitely something for him to work with.
Pixovsky staying alive in this game. Unfortunately for Crooking, not going to last too much longer. Now you can see him trying to make his way into the zone. Of course, he does still have 5 of those shockwaves. He could be using them to shockwave people into the zone. Keon, shockwaves into the zone, get absolutely beamed by Pixovsky, and now it's a 1v1 situation. It's Rebel Gaming versus Pixovsky, and of course, there's only one outcome. Pixovsky coming in with a 5 elimination victory royale. He had everything right there, set up for success, and he had to execute, but boy, did he do it.
Yeah, and I mentioned a lot of those players that were in the top 5 to start that game off. Pixovsky was in 8th place, positioned just inside of that top 10. You got to imagine with a huge feat like that, he's got to boost up that leaderboards and just hold on to that confidence, because this was game number 4 and there's only 2 games left. So a lot of time for these teams to catch up is running out as well.
Yeah, so many big names performing right there. We saw Malibuka in those end games. So unfortunate right there for him to actually throw down that bunker. And it just wasn't big enough. The bunker was about this tall. It wasn't quite working out for him. And those are the difficulties with those bunkers. That's what you have to be careful of. You have to ensure that they're not going to be the bunkers you're going to be trying to play in, because it's not going to happen. But what a game, Jacob, as we live through or relive some of those highlights from it. Some fantastic eliminations. Tom claiming that island, getting eliminations as well. A great performance from him.
Yeah, just with the last couple of shots there. Acer being able to win this fight. You saw Connor was so far ahead, but a couple of missed opportunities, and he survives with 1 HP at the end of that play. A huge amount of success. And you can see now Pixovsky picking up some of his eliminations very, very early on, and then seals the deal here. He did go for the cheeky shockwave play to drop Rebel back inside of his zone, but when it didn't hit, he said, no way, no how are you going to survive, and just dunks on him regardless.
Absolutely. So let's take a little look at game number 4, how it all went down. We just watched it, but let's take a little look at some of the stats from it. 40 points for Pixovsky right there, 5 eliminations, so many to his name, and we can see so many other players just a little bit down below as well, who weren't quite on his level, but still picking up good points.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at some of those players I was talking about in the top 10. Z-Max getting 14th in that last game, so definitely can hurt his position on the leaderboard, especially with a 40-point win there. Just continue to look down. You see some 6 points for some players. You see some 3s, and this is where, you know, that danger, that red light, you know, the red flags need to be going off depending on where you're positioned on the leaderboard, because what you've done up to this point might not simply be enough, and you have to rethink your entire strategy going into these last 2 games.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that, particularly at off-spawn there at Mega City. We saw one of our top players going down very early in Toxic Tryhard, Jacob. We almost predicted it here, that something was going to happen, some big change was going to happen, someone was going to fight for something, and that's exactly what happened. What a big shift.
Yeah, and a big shift it will be with 4 games done. We got 2 games more. Before we get into it, though, we're going to take a quick break.
PlayStation.
Welcome back to the Fortnite PlayStation Cup. If you just joined us, we've been watching the EU0 build action go down. We've had 4 games of incredible, crazy action going on. And of course, my name is Winnie Mana. I'm your host, of course, joined alongside Mr. Jacob PR. We've been enjoying it so far, Jacob, haven't we? I think the story of the day so far is no one's quite been able to find any consistency, and we've seen different players win in different games.
Yeah, to me, that's why I got me dancing. I'm celebrating. It's not just these tunes in the ears right now, but it's just just knowing that if this trend does continue in Game 5, we're going to have a race to the finish there in Game 6 to see who is going to be our EU Zero Build PlayStation Cup champion.
Yeah, the tunes are great, the players are great, and I'm vibing with you right now. Of course, in the last game, Pixovsky picking up a huge victory royale. What a performance it was. Absolutely stellar stuff from him, who's actually been quite consistent throughout the day, but hasn't quite been able to pick up the victory until that last game. Really happy for him.
Yeah, but he did have a monster of a game, a 40-point game, and
yep.
I said it, he was positioned 8th on the leaderboard going into that last game. Where he's positioned now is going to mean so much because I think he gave himself a huge boost of confidence going into our final 2 games. But let's get right into it. Game 5 Mini Miner starts right now.
It starts right now, game number 5. The 4 games we've had so far have not disappointed at all. We've had different zones, different strategies, different players playing to perfection. And I must say, the aim from some of these players has been on point. The Twin Mag Assault Rifles, we talked about it at the beginning of the show. These are devastating.
Yeah, it definitely is. And we're seeing a lot of these players. 33 points right now for Leo. He's currently positioned around that top 30 position. 31 to be exact for him, and he knows right now he doesn't need to have a first place monster game with 20 eliminations by any means. He just has to put himself within reach of that top of the leaderboard for him to try to grab it away. And he's one of those players, we highlighted him in that last game, landing towards the west side of Relentless Retreat. While everybody's concerned with the Mythic and the vaults that go down over there, he's just trying to scrape together some loot. And I feel like depending on what loot he gets, depends on how daring he's willing to stretch from here on out. Wow,
absolutely.
What amount of loot he just found in that one case.
Yeah, a little heist bag turned into a whole vault worth of loot sometimes, but that's just how it works. We see Malabuka landing at his home, the racetrack. Unfortunately, hasn't been at the races as you'd like to see him today, but by no means doing badly at all. Not quite been at his absolute Sunday best, but here connected with some shots, actually using those tires that he knows so well. And wow, that's just an example of knowing how to fight your drop spot, having that experience, using the tires to his advantage. And there it is, the emote comes through.
That was Volkswagen. That was the same guy who switched up his drop and went Mega City in this last game and took down Tryhard. He's switching it up. And that's something that we talked about. When you asked me what, if I was a coach, what I would tell my players, exactly that. You have to make those daring plays if you want to try to jump up the leaderboard. I feel like that was just a little too daring. I feel like he could have played it just a little bit different, sneaking up onto Malabuka. But I think if Toxic Tryhard saw him in the feed, maybe he feels a little bit more comfortable that he's not going to get snuck on this time around. Yeah,
I could almost hear the sigh of relief from Toxic Tryhard from here, because he would not want to be landed on like he was in the last game. If you didn't see it, Toxic Tryhard got landed on by Volko, and it was a really, really difficult situation for him. Not used to being contested, just like Max at this vault, seemingly getting it every single game, enjoying the loot that it has. Of course, not crazy loot like we've seen from some of the Mythic vaults, some of the new ones, but definitely some pretty solid loot to get himself started. Sky Jump, of course, at his natural habitat as well. And we're just seeing him actually just rotating all the way through this area. Plenty of loot in this area. I'm not even sure how he's got this whole area uncontested. Like, he's got so much loot to his name. All of those chests. He's got the actual loot in his inventory as well to boast those those 4 shockwaves, I should say. And, of course, those 2 bunkers. Pixovsky, our game number 3, or game number 4 winner. Not quite having the best day before that, but bolstered his points massively going into this game. And he's wanting to try and stay on that mental high note. Of course, the vibes, I'm sure, for him right now are really, really good. And I think he's going to be feeling confident going into this game 5.
Pixovsky got to be feeling confident. 89 points so far. He's actually done enough. He's done enough with that 40-point game victory in that last one to claim that first place spot.
Wow.
65 of his points come through pure placement, which means he has about 24. He has 12 eliminations so far up until this point. I wouldn't say it's the highest by any means, but it's definitely enough to put him above and beyond. Second place, 79 points, and then third place with 74 points. And this is our second place player right here, Z-Max, one of the most, I would say, most consistent overall, because if you look at his like average placement, he's playing pretty well. His average time alive is some of the highest in the lobby with 22 minutes and 53 seconds. Might as well say 23 minutes at this point. So as long as he can stay consistent and is players that are close to him on the leaderboard continue to have inconsistent games, he might be looking at our PlayStation Cup championship.
And you know what I find most impressive about the way Max has been playing today is that he hasn't got zones. You know, a lot of players will be like, oh, you know, they got all the zones. They got pretty lucky with that. The RNG was on their side. Max hasn't had any RNG go his way, it seems like, all day. But for Malabuka, he's involved in a fight. It's Glub. He'll know this player well. He's going to try and connect with some shots. And of course, it's Malabuka. He doesn't miss. He doesn't miss any time.
I think players are crazy right now for testing Malabuka, but they probably see the feed. They think Malabuka, he might be weak. Might be low on HP. This is the chance to pounce, but the amount of loot he was able to gather from his racetrack, and then he knows the surrounding locations as well, where you can find some big pots, some other chests. You don't have to waste time farming up, so that's not going to be a worry. You can quickly go from chest to chest to try to collect as much of that loot as possible. Very, very early on in this game, and Malabuka knows not to get too excited too early.
Yeah, he doesn't need to. I mean, all the players that he's eliminated so far has been appearing at his front door like a conveyor belt. You know, who's going to be eliminated next? Oh, there he is, and take him out. Easy peasy for Malabuka. Pixovsky, another one of our top players, not got the elimination so far, and we often see that after a big game, players don't want to take risks. You don't want to try and go for too many high eliminations. You don't want to risk losing the next game, because after you have a big game, the next game is absolutely vital to set the tone for how your tournament's going to go. For Max, though, having to rotate towards the south of his drop spot, knows there's a player inside of there, tries to take some shots, but doesn't quite connect. And again, we're seeing the assault rifle and SMG loadout. And remember, this is where those NPCs spawn. I think they might not have spawned this game. That's why we're not seeing the forecast tower, or maybe someone else has already claimed it. We'll have to wait and see. I think it looks as though there has been some activity here, and he's quite happy just to sit inside of this bush. And he thinks there's someone inside of that house. We, of course, know that there isn't, but who knows who could be lurking there eventually. Leox, we've seen him be a little bit more aggressive for these forecast towers throughout today. Maybe he'll go for it again. Maybe he's just trying to traverse the map, but running out in the open here, he has to be very careful.
Yeah, Leox already has a third place finish on the day so far. It was in game number 2. He picked up 3 eliminations on the way for that third place as well. So he definitely knows he has it in him. He has the potential to pop off at any moment. It's just about finding that consistency through and through. And instead of going straight for that forecast tower, he probably feels, and just like we know, it is going to be rather contested. There's going to be a lot of players over there. But from one side of the map to the next, Smithy's going almost uncontested towards Naughty Nets. He got the exotic slap splashes, 6 shockwaves, some big bush bombs. The only thing in my head I fear is the lack of the shotgun, but we've seen a lot of success coming out from a lot of these SMGs on the day.
Yeah, seeing Smithy's aim earlier, you know what, I'm not even concerned at all. I think no shotgun, that's the play for him. We've seen him absolutely beam with this loadout. So we'll see if we can see that continue in this game. I'm sure we will, as he positions himself inside of a bush. Max decides to go from bush to bush, as he's set up a couple here. He has some extra heals. We've seen that a lot today. Lots of players trying to use those extra heals. And Malabuka on the hunt, trying to find another player. It's Rush, who could be the next victim of Malabuka's prowess, as he decides to hold fire for a little bit, play up on top of this, make sure he can get as much angle, or as much of a high angle as possible, before he can try and pounce on this player. Because he knows there's so many players looking nearby, and that just shows how quickly Malabuka can turn on the aggression, but then turn it straight off again. He knows, he has the experience, he's been in this situation before, he's been playing on the biggest stages for the longest time. He knows he has the experience to get those eliminations later on. He doesn't need it now.
Yeah, he's won one of the biggest third-party events in zero builds as well. Yes, it was duos, but it just goes to show that he has the experience to definitely fight with the best and take out the rest, and starting in 8th place, just like Pixovsky did in that last game, who now moved up into 1st place. So that trend does continue. We can see Malabuka with a top finish here at the top of the leaderboard as Nathan takes down Moles in the feed. Cyclone goes down as well. And so for some, they're leaving it all to that last game, that 6th and final go-around, which comes up not too far from now after this game finishes, to see if they're going to boost up the leaderboard. And even if they're out of reach when it comes to 1st place, there's still a lot of monies up for grabs going down to each and every one of those placements.
Definitely is. All worth fighting for. Each individual player has their own storyline. For Max, he's going to try and keep up this consistency. It looks like he's going to try and get on the aggressive as well. We've seen him actually sharing bunkers with other players earlier on when he's been a bit more scuffed, and it looks as though he's going to try and avoid using his bunkers as much as possible. Actually rotating back inside of the storm. could go and try and find a more favorable position where there isn't 3 players lurking nearby. This is why he's been playing so consistent all day, because he's just able to not make those rash decisions. He knows that the high ground's above. He can actually rotate all the way around, and now he was in the downgraded position, if you like. He was in the worse off position from an E6, but now he's got the high ground.
And if you look at his loot right now, that he does have those exotic slap splashes, all it just takes is one. All it takes is one of those. He's back up to tip-top shape. Then he's able to kind of use it as a pseudo mobility with the tactical sprint. Try to get out of there. Spots another player in the distance, just biding his time, just trying to figure out who else might be hiding around any nook and cranny. I think a lot of our experts here when it comes to zero build realize that they literally could be hiding almost anywhere here on the map, and finds a med miss, so he doesn't even have to use the slap splash early on, saving a lot of his resources and heals towards the end. But Skyjump hears a lot of the commotion going down, and he wants a piece of that pie. But as soon as he gets there, doesn't spot too many players inside of a fight. Peeks above, trying to take some shots onto the bush. Doesn't really connect with much, but he knows those players that he just heard fighting have to be nearby. But you can see with the disengage coming through, he doesn't want to spend too much time lurking over an elimination that he might not even get.
I like that, though. He actually opened his cache and then wasn't just sat on the cache. He wasn't just sat in the bush nearby. He was being proactive. He was making sure that nobody nearby could not only steal his cache, but also sneak up on him as well, which is really, really great stuff from Skyjump. We know how much of an experienced player he is, not just in the EU scene, but also specifically on console. We have some of our players competing today that have moved from PC to console for this specific event. So having that experience on the platform that Skyjump has, of course, on the PlayStation, he knows how to play, and he knows his strengths, he knows his weaknesses when it comes to this. And you can see him taking that combat SMG, of course, such a powerful weapon when you put it in the hands of someone like Skyjump. And just having that brain to match, to not engage, not take those risks. Just like Crooking has been doing all day. Troll King actually investing one of these shockwaves to pick up an elimination onto Angle. He found the perfect angle by shotwaving up, and his shot didn't disappoint.
Yeah, that was a beautiful shot from Troll King. 72 points, so you can kind of see 89 first, 79 is going to be second, and then you got that 74 points going to be in third, so he's definitely trying to move himself on up. Placement points starting to click in as well, even though we're just at the precipice of it all. Only 1 point so far for the efforts. For him, he's just kind of banking on not having to rotate far. He does have his mobility, he does have his heals, but he also has what looks like probably a center position or not too far from it in the zone.
Yeah, solid position to be in. Steamy Springs. You are on low ground, but more often than not, at this stage of the game, when you're playing zero build, you really don't want to be in the best position. It sounds weird, but you don't want to be up on the high ground. You don't want to be getting looked at by the whole lobby. You want to try and save as much of those resources, as much of that utility as possible. And playing low, playing in this sort of unfavorable position could work out for him, because he can take that position later on with all the shockwaves and, of course, all the bunkers that you might be able to gather from that. But Crooking finds himself a shockwave, actually picking up the med mist as well. It looks as though he's going to have to make a long rotation into the storm, or into the zone, I should say, from the storm. So actually making sure he's healed up as much as possible. And now he's going to get on his bike, because it's time to rotate on in. This is where things get difficult. For someone that is this high on the leaderboard, a single mistake, a single wrong turn could spell the end of his game and could put him out of the running.
Yeah, join in on this game. He was in third place so far. So he definitely has a lot to lose compared to others, and with only one shockwave to his name, it's going to be a tough rotate in. Leo started this one in 7th place, trying to move on up. Rift Island is going to appear, and he's going to be one of the first players there. There's a lot for him to kind of gather if he can cut that capture point. You get the slurp juices, probably trade those bush bombs away, and just try to figure out what is going to be the best loadout, as Extreme joins him at the top of the island as well. Just taking a couple of shots, but you can see it doesn't really do too much damage thanks to that overshield.
Yeah, not too bad. So we often see there's a little bit of standoff between two players on the island. Leox trying to prioritize the capture point, whereas Extreme, usually we see the other player going for the house, but he's actually going to go for that vault. If you didn't know, there is actually a vault on the Rift Island. It requires 2 keys to open, and you can get a few chests, a little bit of shield as well in the form of those slurp barrels. So he's actually able to get a little bit of extra loot here. Nothing really of value for him in his current loadout, but maybe we'll see him switch out that rocket ram. But it looks as though Leox is going to be getting the better loot for now, as he does capture the capture point. Of course, gets marked, or gets a marker onto Extreme as well. So I like the plays from Leox. Maybe he will try and play for that high ground right now, and it is just inside of the zone for this island. I like this positioning from Leox. We've seen him be a little bit more aggressive for these mid-map, mid-game objectives as well in the past, and he's doing it again.
trying to take advantage of every little bit that you can gather. You can see his gold as well, so he has a couple rerolls in his back pocket. He doesn't like the augments that get chosen for him. Got that slurp juice, but interesting to see him kind of stick to that combat SMG. But I mean, if it ain't broke, you don't have to fix it, and Leox is just right within contention of that first place spot. Not too far off. And then I talked about, even if you somehow slip up, you don't get first, there's still a ton of money up for grabs with each and every one of those placements, maxing out at first place at $3,000, which everybody's really fighting for here, including Malibuca. 2 eliminations. We talked about him. He can get fast and aggressive. He can play a little slow. He's one of those players that can flip that switch at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, he really can. It's just a testament to his experience in the game and his experience in zero build as well, particularly, which some of these players might not have. They might not have been putting in the work, putting in the hours to practice zero build, and it's those that do that will really thrive. As Toxic Tryhard, one of our players that has been thriving all day, unfortunately wasn't thriving off spawn in the last game, but has just about made it off spawn in this game. The next challenge, though, rotating into that side of zone where so many players are lurking. You can see how many players are still inside of Mega City. Very much not an easy position at all. And it looks as though he's actually going to try and go south for one of these launch pads, these static launch pads that are on the map, because he knows the congestion is to the west. Let's try and go south.
Gonna be a smart play if you're able to react to it quick. And then he even finds a weapon cache. It's not even so much for the weapon, it's for those slurp juices that are going to get dropped. Multiple med kits, so where he doesn't really have to take damage or use them immediately. And then a couple more heals, shields do pop out as well. Only danger that he's facing right now is the longer this whole process takes, a lot of teams will begin to jump in front of him, take his path away, and force him to once again try to reposition, think outside of the box. But for Toxic Tryhard, if he could just find that same style of play that he did in game 1 to take it on overall. He was really aggressive. He got 10 eliminations. Over 50 points dropped in that game 1. He could definitely catch up. Been a little quiet since then, but it's never too late. And I always say never, because anything is possible.
Anything's possible, particularly when your name is Toxic Tryhard, because he is one of those players that has been able to put on a show today. We saw it, of course, in game number 1. He just got off to a great start. It was a fantastic start, and he couldn't have dreamed of anything better. I think he's going to pop this medkit right now, take those slurps and get straight into the zone. A few other players in the local area trying to do the same thing in the vicinity of him, but for Malibuca, they're trying to rotate in as well. Leox still up on this island. He actually takes out Tom Love's SMGs, which we saw Tom, of course, going up for this island before. Not quite as successful this time. Leox is coming out on top. Is that 2 slurp juices there? 2 stacks of slurp juices? Jeez, that is insane. And for Toxic Tryhard, he's found another player that's decided to try and contest him for that launch pad, and he shuts the door completely. Yeah,
it's a big find. At least 1 bunker. That's more than enough to save you, as long as it's thrown right, of course. We've seen a couple mishaps where the trajectory of the bunker doesn't really go as planned. You're forced to kind of think outside of the box. You see Leox trying to basically dribble those extra heals and loot on over to the sides. That way he can use them right before he makes his move. About 60 HP he can gather from those slap splashes, so more than enough to get him up to 100 HP before he makes his rotation on out, which isn't far either. As long as he makes the right moves through the zone, he definitely doesn't have too much to worry out for. But if anybody catches him, begins to look up, makes him a focus, that could be the last time we see him in this game.
Definitely, and for Toxic Tryhard right now, it is a 2-tick zone. Slowly going to start to turn into a 5-tick in the next zone, so he's going to be very, very careful. Leox seems to be completely unscathed as he made that launch pad rotate into the zone, now able to get into the safe zone himself. 4 bushes to his name, so he's actually able to put those down and sit wherever he likes. He's not restricted to some of the natural ones, but he decides, you know what? Reduce, reuse, recycle this bush. And why not? Because he doesn't have to expend his own.
Yeah, he got himself a good spot in the zone as well. Not as deep as some would hope, but definitely got himself a nice bush, but ends up in a little aim duel over on the other side. Doesn't really take too much damage, but it's enough to make him almost second guess his position right now in towards the zone. But I think looking towards the back, realizing, hey, that's just the edge. A lot of teams are beginning to move in from the north side of the map. There's no turning back at this point.
Toxic Tryhard. And himself another slurp juice, I think, 'cause he's now got 2 in his inventory, so this will turn into a more difficult zone to rotate in, a 5-tick very, very soon, so For players like Troll King, they're going to have to try and stay alive as long as possible. 5 shockwaves, but no more cover left. As Danis right now inside of the air. Toxic tryhard sneaking in from the zone. From the storm, decides to pounce on and make an attack on the player that's inside of there. How is he going to play this one out? Is he going to try and close out the elimination? Surely he has to, because he needs this elimination. Hits the shot, but wow! A return fire from Rush PeaceU, who absolutely denies Toxic tryhard.
Must have been all headshots with the SMG and a well-placed shotgun shot as well. Troll King, another daring rotation to go for him. Can either walk it on foot, which I don't recommend considering there's so many players located in and around. Those 5 shockwaves are becoming fruitful for him. But he's with that bush. You can see him kind of waiting for a lot of these players to begin their rotation on out before he makes his own move. I could see him maybe doing a half and half mixture between trying to run in towards the zone and as he gets close to danger, trying to shockwave over it. The choice is definitely his. Crooking not having to make that same choice, though. He already got himself a safe spot in towards zone as we jump on board Max. Max has been one of the most consistent players so far. He's averaging about a 10th place finish in most of these games. And so overall, he's got to be one of the favorites to finish strong yet again in this game.
Absolutely, but this is one of the most difficult situations we've seen him be in all day. We've seen him have the answers to a lot of the questions that the zones have been asking of him, but this is going to be really difficult. It's not quite as far as we've seen him rotate before, but it's more treacherous. There's more players ahead. He doesn't quite have any mobility, so he has no shockwaves or anything like that. He does, of course, have those slap smashes, which is going to enable him to run for an unlimited amount of time, for a short period of time. He's not going to be able to... He's not going to run out of that stamina. But for Troll King, actually going down, it's Pophead that takes him out. That's one of our huge players inside of the game that has now been sent back to the lobby as Max now having to expend so many of these heals to rotate in. He'll probably make his way in, but in what state?
Yeah, he's going to have to use a lot of those heals, but finds a med kit. So he wants to probably use as little of those slap splashes as possible, unless he becomes a target from somebody, of course. And then use that med kit to try to finish the job, get the HP on up.
Wow.
Nice shots. Nice shots. Nice elimination found and a chance to kind of refresh a lot of the loot that he used early on. Sky jump using one of many shockwaves, a couple of those bunkers to try to find safety. Doesn't find really anything to work with. A little bit of a tree. Nobody spots him out like a Christmas ornament at the top. He definitely found some safety, but the last of his heals are going to be used.
Yeah, he's not looking too much like a star at the top of that tree right now in terms of the loadout. It's not looking too great. We got Crooking, who is looking pretty great in terms of the loadout. One elimination for him. Another one of our top players that's trying to hunt down the top of the leaderboard. Sky Jump, unfortunately, not going to last too much longer. Been knocked off the tippity top of that tree. I think he had to make his way in. Unfortunately, wasn't quite going to work out for him. But Crooking just able to use these bushes to his advantage. Of course, we see him reusing a lot of bushes earlier. Now this is where that's actually going to pay off, because of course he has some extra ones to use in endgame. Still got one shockwave as well as a bunker. This could be looking good for Crooking if he can make these next shots count.
Yeah, and you add in the fact that 4th through 6th place is now down and out of this game. So even though you still have to contest with the top half of the leaderboard, players that are directly positioned below, this is where he can try to close that or spread that gap open even more. Kozovsky in first place, so we know the threshold to try to take the crown at the end of the day. 102 points, continuously counting, which each and every player that does drop. Scoffing's going to take down Dylan. Kozovsky's just trying to be patient, not bite off more than he can chew, even getting tagged up, but not panicking and trying to shockwave out either. These are the type of moves. These are the type of nerves you need to have in a game just like this.
Definitely, as Zenku does drop down there. It's Shizy right there who does take him out. Max inside of the zone. We saw him pick up such a huge refresh earlier. 5 eliminations for him. Again, we keep saying it, so consistent. And this is why he's able to get so many refreshes at the crucial time. And he still has 11 of those splashes to his name. How does he do it?
Yeah, and you can kind of see we were just looking at first place at 102 points. He has closed the gap because to start this game, he was 10 points down. Consistency is definitely going to be key as Kozovsky is just trying to gather all the loot before he makes his next move, but he knows he doesn't have to make it now. He has time to work with, and the decision he makes is going to be crucial with considering it's a little bit of a 2-horse race in Game 5.
Max right now actually going towards that bunker that he had to clear out earlier on, actually benefiting from it hugely as well. He's now got himself 4 bunkers. He's going to make his way into the zone using these shockwaves. Fantastic play. He's going to get straight into the next zone as well. Cover to match. I love the plays right now, but no, I think it was Nipsey right there who actually ends up rocket ramming straight onto his face, and unfortunately that sent him flying, having to use all of his bunkers, and now what was looking so rosy is not looking so good anymore.
Yeah, into the top 7. This is where we get into the thick of it, when players are running out of resources, running out of ideas. All they have left is to make a daring play, but Max building a base like he's playing builds in 0 builds against everybody else. Bizofsky towards the outside. This could be a big elimination. Beam through the sky, drop down low, and he goes out, and Max gets the points for it as well. This could be a chance for Max to hold on and take that first place as he spots down another player towards the outside of zone. Shockwave's going out, trying to burst him away. That one's going to be a little success, but he takes so much damage. Top 2 position, but he gets squeezed out at the very end, but he did more than enough to steal away the show.
What a fantastic game right there from Max. Skeeks coming out on top in the end, just taking advantage of Max, just using those shockwaves, maybe panicking a little bit right there. He got into the situation that we haven't seen him in all day, just about to pick up that victory. It would have been his first of the day without so much consistency. He wouldn't be at the top of the leaderboard, but he is. He is there. He's at the top of the leaderboard. Hopefully for him, it will be first place, because what a performance there, Jacob.
Yeah, it's definitely one that you can really kind of hang your hat on, and boost of confidence going into game 6. I talked about the average placement. Yeah, he has a 19th and he has about a 15th or so. Don't quote me on that last one, but he has 3 placings inside of the top 10, which a lot of his points are really coming from. I said top 8 and above is going to be the key for consistency overall, and I think Max is now the epitome of consistency on the day.
And we saw him actually take out Pixovsky right there. That's going to be a huge boost, because not only does he get those elimination points, he gets the elimination onto the player that was above him. And of course, he's going to be able to pick up more of those placement points that Pixovsky didn't have access to. Perfectly played endgame from him. Just about not able to pick up the refresh. But as we scroll on all the way back to the beginning of the game, when we saw Malibuka absolutely dominating in his drop spot, we take a look at more highlights from the game.
Yeah, that wasn't even his turret. That was the other player's turret that was targeting Malibuka. But Troll King, with the high flying plays, able to take down one, and this is where he eventually went down the right hand sneak attack peak. This is where Max was just getting started. 4 eliminations, he gets his 5th. You see where he got a lot of that loot from. Rexy, that elimination actually got stolen away by Squeaks, where he finishes up, gets the last 2 eliminations, and to take the game overall. That is a 40-point game for Squeaks, and this is his chance. This is his chance. As long as he's with contention of that first place, he definitely has a shot at the crown.
Yeah, definitely a huge game. We talk about comebacks. I mean, game number 5 is the time to make a big game happen if you need it, because then you have something to build on for game 6. You have a spark, a fire in your belly. You're feeling good. So for Skeeks, I'm hoping that he can continue that going into the next game. Of course, Max having a solid game there as well, so he'll be boosted up on that leaderboard. I'm sure we'll have to wait and see whether that is a first place spot for him. But for Skyjump, having another decent game, but again, not quite doing so great. Troll King not having the best game either, as well as Toxic Tryhard, another one of our top tier players, not quite living up to that.
Yeah, and this is just the results for game 5. And if you notice, a lot of these placings, the players went down, for example, 66. He was able to still get more points than some of those players around him. It wasn't a bunch of points, but going into this last game, you have to take everything that you've learned through games 1 through 5 and try to mash it together, because you might have a little bit of a game plan going into the day, but if the lobby doesn't suit that game plan, you're kind of forced to switch things up more than just a little bit, depending on where you're at on the leaderboard. And you're really seeing a lot of the players' preferred loadouts. You're seeing those shockwaves, the bunkers, the big bush bombs even, and nobody really wanted to take that rocket ramp due to so much risk that it takes just to rotate in towards the zone, especially later on in the game.
I mean, speaking of the rocket ram, we saw Nipsey actually using it in that end game.
The one time.
Just go straight into Max. Of the one time we see someone use it, it actually ends up getting Max into a difficult situation. That was awkward for him, but that's almost just epitomizes his whole day. We've seen him get in difficult situations so many times today, whether it be with zones, whether it be with other players, whether it be in fights, and he always seems to have the answer. I don't know how he does it, Jacob.
Yeah, it's just when the experts, when you a superstar of the game of Fortnite, you have passion for it, and you learn more than just builds. You learn that 0 builds as well. It allows you a lot of freedom and flexibility. It allows you to kind of look at things from almost another angle as well, and really bring some surprises to the table. And Z-Max, you got to give him a bunch of credit from his consistency. Even though he's had a great amount of points throughout multiple games, it's the consistency that has been key for him, because he's one of the few players in that top 5 right now that don't have a victory royale.
Yeah, and that just shows how consistent he has been in the games that he has played today. When some of the other players, they've had victories, they've had decent games to go along with it, but no one can match Max's consistency right now. And I think this is where a mental side of the game comes in, right? Of course, we're in game number 4. We just had game number 5. We're going into game number 6, the final opportunity, the final chance. If you were at the top of the leaderboard, if you were first place, how would you calm yourself down? Would you be nervous? Would you be excited? How would you think and how would you approach it at this situation?
Honestly, I wouldn't be too nervous. I'd be thinking, like, I've shown that I got what it takes to be toward that top of the leaderboard. I just got to follow that blueprint, follow that plan. And you got to realize this is game 6, right? Even though you might have the chance to control your destiny, some other players in this same lobby might have to get a little wild if they want a chance at first place or even just more money in their pockets at the end of the day. So I got to be able to kind of not hold on to my shockwaves, not hold on to my mobility if I'm looking to kind of get out of a bad fight. Sometimes you just got to take what you can and survive to live to tell the tale. And I think Max has been playing that perfectly. Pixosophy has shown that he's above and beyond the rest as well. So I'm thinking between those two, it's just about playing your game plan.
You think it's a 2-horse race? Max versus Pixosophy potentially.
We'll
have to wait and see. Of course, Crooking as well, another player that we've seen quite consistently getting some placements throughout the games. We've seen him popping off in a few other ones as well. Maybe not quite on the same level as Max, but someone definitely to keep an eye out going into the last game.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be a treat as you continue to kind of figure out how the lay of the land has actually been. A lot of these players have been kind of aggressive early on in game 1, but even, has slowed down. You look at Toxic Tryhard, 10 of his eliminations came in game 1. He's still towards the top side of the leaderboard, but he's realized how aggressive the lobby is. And since it's solos, you don't know who you're fighting at any turn, at any moment, due to the amount of rotation, due to the amount of just thinking to try to just make a spot elsewhere than what you would normally go to. I'm just chewing over my words there for a second, but you just got to really think outside of the box here, and you got to realize that other teams are going to have to be unorthodox if they're looking to take the top position on the leaderboard. And if you're thinking that it's going to be smooth sailing, that's what's really going to catch most of these players off guard.
Yeah, not going to be smooth sailing at all. Of course, Malibuka in that last game, we saw him getting landed on unexpectedly. We saw Toxic Tryhard in the game before getting landed on unexpectedly. It's almost a Misha and Tini situation for those that watched the grand finals in the EU last season. There's some players are just landing in different areas, different games, trying to figure out what works best and trying to cut off some teams' loop paths that maybe they might think, yeah, actually, this player rotates in there. They get the vault, they do that. If I just try and intercept that, they're not going to expect it. And I expect to see that in game 6, Jacob.
Yeah, I think a lot of players just don't realize, like, the simple things. You know as well as I do, playing Fortnite, you think to yourself, well, no one's going to do this. It's not smart play. Well, it's those same smart plays when it happens. It's just a few times, like I said earlier on. It might happen once with that drop spot switch up, but you can't expect it to work over and over again, or at least in the surprise fashion that it did. A lot of these strategies to say the same is when you really let off your guard is when those surprises and everything begins to kind of turn upside down. So I think at every moment of this game, these players need to expect the worst to happen, and then when it doesn't happen, it makes it a little bit easier to traverse through.
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, this is Fortnite. This is zero build. This is the PlayStation Cup. Anything can happen. Nothing is set in stone yet. And for those players that have already got their drop spot sorted, they do have their loot pass sorted, like Max at Slappy Shores. Nothing is guaranteed. But what is guaranteed is there'll be 6 games today. We've shown you 5. We have 6 ready to go right now. Game number 6 is starting. All the players are getting onto that battle bus for one last time here, Jacob. What a ride it's been. Let's hope they can close it out on a nice victory for some of our top teams.
Yep, this is the final countdown, the final go-around for these teams to try to claim that top spot. And this is going to be a really interesting one. A little bit of a different bus path from right to left, north to south. So a lot of these teams that had the complete opposite in that last game, early to drop to Relentless Retreat. Your time is definitely ticking if you don't pull that zone onto your side of the map. You see ZMax landing over towards that vault that lands towards Slappy Shores. Kind of the same as usual with a lot of these players that do land towards the vault. It's interesting to see if anybody tries to catch him off guard, switch up their drop spot, and just kind of judging off the mini-map. It's almost the least contested I've seen Slappy Shores on the day.
Yeah, definitely. There's some other triangles there, but I believe those are the NPCs. I always get confused by those. I'm like, oh my god, he's fully contested. Oh my gosh, he's going crazy. But no, it's all right. There's just some NPCs there.
6 people contesting South Slappy.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past it. I mean, you know, if you're going to land on anyone, you want to try and land on the player that's having the most success, because you want to make sure that you can try and have some of that success as well. And we've seen it happen in Fortnite tournaments before, where first place gets landed on by second place, but it looks as though that hasn't quite happened this time. Everyone's sticking to their guns. I think everyone's sticking to what they know, and they don't want to try and ruin anyone's chance at making cash, because of course they want to try and bolster their own chances as well and stick to what they know.
Yep. There's retreat, kind of business as usual, not over contested. I think a lot of players, especially here in Game 6, are realizing what is at risk, and that is everything. Toxic Tryhard, once again, we kind of know his strategy. I feel like he can do it with his eyes closed at this point. Going straight for that vault, the quick early chest. There's a lot of chests in the building that he does land at. It's particularly the spot. But he has his game plan down packed. Not too many players looking like they're contesting him very, very early on, even though there does look like there's a lot of activity going down. 116 points. That is the line to beat right now. Z-Max in first place. You're kind of seeing how he's doing it rather easy. And unlike a lot of those mythic vaults, even though there's a lot of those NPCs around, they're not just going to go swarm him because they open the vault, because there's no mythic to grab.
No mythic to grab, not as valuable for some of the players nearby. Pixovsky, another one of our top players. Second place for him right now by only 3 points. We hopped on board with Max earlier on. He had 116, Pixovsky with 113. So it is a very, very close race for first place, which is always great. We want to see it going into the last game. A little battle. It's always great when we see someone absolutely dominating, but it's so cool to see 2 players going head-to-head. Maybe even 3 or 4, of course. Crooking, Leox in 3rd and 4th, respectively. So they might have a part to play in this final game as well. But for Pixovsky, he's just wanted to continue that console prowess that we've seen from him in the past and get another win under his belt.
I think anything is definitely possible here in our final game of the day. Only a 3-point differential between the two juggernauts of the game, but what we've seen throughout the day is first place sometimes go down, second place sometimes gets taken out as well, which opens up the wide open for someone like Crooking, who's just waiting in the wings for an opportunity to strike, and he's able to pick up some eliminations and a first place. Even if those players do not go down, there's still a chance for him to overcome the opposition. We've seen some big games before where, you know, game 1, for example, 50 points for Toxic Tryhard, 29 points for the next best player. That would be enough to overtake at least one position here for Crooking. Maybe even more if he can have those players go down early on. But just like everywhere else on the map, slow and steady does win the race. You don't want to take on too many risks too early on.
Yeah, this is where things all start to turn into a mental game. Do you stick to the strategy that you know, depending on your situation? Do you try and switch things up, maybe? For Max, he's following the same blueprint that we've seen him follow throughout the whole day. South Slappy being his drop spot of choice. And he's been enjoying the loot here, of course. There's a guaranteed legendary combat SMG when you eliminate the bot down here. So that's why he's been able to get that every single game. So that definitely had a big part to play. And you can see he already has maximum light ammo from these chests, from this area. Nipsey, who was originally landing at the Frenzy Fields area, I believe, looks as though he might have switched drop spot. Then I say, actually, no, he's been landing there all tournament. I was thinking of someone else. We all make mistakes.
I'm more surprised that he's going that 6 bunker route, even though he has shockwaves. Probably doesn't find the comfortable heals that he's looking for, like a probably finding med mist, probably finding med kits. You see, he doesn't even really want the minis as of now. He's probably thinks that he can find and use a lot of this later on in the game, as long as he continues to try to survive. And just judging by where you can see just the edge of the zone over towards Sanguine Suites, there's a high possibility we're going to have a little bit of a north zone this time around.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I say he was originally landing at Frenzy was because he's landed there for so long. You know, he's been a Frenzy Fields guru. But I think it just shows when you switch up the drop for zero build, you have to sort of play to the game mode, you know? Builds, maybe Frenzy is more prevalent for him, but I think Sanguine Suites could be the option that is working out better for him. Invade, sat inside of this house. Max will know. Max will know that he's there because it's happened so many times. We've seen him in this situation so many times again and again. Max just trying to complete the same rotation that he's done. It looks as though he's got a more favorable zone than he has in the past. Trying to box up on top of this. Oh, I say box up. It's zero build. Bush up on top of this little hill. And look down at the potential for a little bit of a skirmish, but not finding anything. I don't think these NPCs have spawned yet again, or maybe someone's already taken them. Of course, those forecast towers just being so valuable. Not quite yet.
Yeah, he's probably just waiting. Even if he doesn't go for the key itself, it does look like he at least wants the slurps. We know as well as I do, it doesn't matter what game mode that you're playing, those slurp juices really do play a massive role in survival, in terms of having that flexibility to go in and out of the zone or take a much less wanted route. But because you have that slurp juice, you're able to make anything happen. Malibuca, he's a far away from home, just trying to rotate on out. Forecast tower is going to appear. Max needs to be careful because it's not just him who's looking over in this direction. There's two more people very, very close by, and then two more after that are in the distance, and with the twin mag AR, it can deal a ton of damage, but Max, he knows exactly where kind of the general positions where players would kind of box up, or in most cases just be at the top of the roof.
Big fight here though for Pixovsky. Second place on the leaderboard in a little bit of a skirmish. This is really not what he wants, I don't think. He does have the loot to make it further into the game, but maybe this is a sort of player that wants to try and be aggressive. We've seen it all day taking those mid-game fights, but this time he says, you know what, actually, I've got to count my chickens here. I've got to continue with the loot that I've got. I don't want to go too crazy. This is an important game for me. I think I'm going to disengage, maybe try and find some extra loot, some extra scraps, maybe some more heals to continue through this game, but I like this strategy. My only concern here, no mobility, no shockwaves, none of those, of course, rocket rams or any of those crash pad juniors, no way of getting around, but luckily for him, there seems to be no one in the area. Max, someone that has been using the crash pad so much today, actually to get onto the forecast tower, claim it, and then bounce all the way back into the bush. Oh, just about slips out, but I think he's able to get back inside. And that is a beautiful strategy, well executed, able to dip in, hop in the key card, and then get right back out.
Malibuca, you can see him trying to be very, very wary of said strategy, or just breaking down on another side of the map, just kind of blindly shooting into the bush. For him, he landed just a couple of shots, so he does have confirmation that a player is trying to hide in that spot. Somebody right below Malibuca as well. A lot to watch out for. That's Rush in the distance. It's getting a little bit crowded over here towards Creaky Compound, and just makes it that much more risky to try to go through if you don't have mobility. But luckily for Malibuca, he has not only that mobility, but elevation as well, which we can use combined with that shockwave to just get out of dodge that much quicker and cover that much more ground.
Yeah, definitely a smart player in Malibuca. Standing inside of this little bit of elevated area, so much low ground around, so he's able just to be in a really solid position. Max yet again just in a solid position, trying to claim the best augments that he can to bolster his game as much as he can. Again, he's using these crash pads to rotate around as quickly as he can, not having to use those shockwaves. And again, he's got the roaming redeploy, which just enables him to cover so much ground. But if he's not careful, he's going to rotate straight into the bush. And Pacey,
oh no,
oh no, could this be the end for Max? It is! Max, our first place player, is out. The most consistent player we have seen all day today has fallen at the last hurdle.
In 82nd place, and Pizovsky has to be cheering right now inside, but he has to be able to compose himself. Pacey, who just took down first place, goes down right after the angle. He just needs 4 points to take away that first place spot, but he can't just have his eyes set on those 4 points, as Briefcase Turret just doing a huge amount of annoyance. I can't even call it damage. It's only 20 shield, gets dropped off just like that, but he has to make sure that he doesn't go down too early either, because then that just opens up the door for the next man down on the leaderboard.
Goodness me, that is a huge turning point in the competition. As you mentioned, Pixovsky will be very happy with how that's played out, but he's not in first place yet. 3 points off the mark. He really has to make this game count now even more than he had to before, because the door is wide open. It's a massive barn door that has just been smashed wide open for him, because he now has the prime position to take the whole game and, of course, take the tournament, which he'll have his eyes on. Another player just inside of that little hut right there. Troll King, another one of our top players, having to retreat back inside of the zone and use these splashes that he really wanted to try and save, but he's having to use that a little earlier than he would have liked. Has got some loot to get on out, though, if he does need to. But this is a tough situation for him. Pivsovsky not in a tough situation at all. He's the king of the the king of the hill right now, and he's looking good.
Yeah. If he's going off of just placement alone, he needs about a top 40 to get the 4 points needed to get 117 and pass up Max on that leaderboard. Sky Jump getting that one elimination. Now taking away that hiding spot as well. Malabuka looking like he was in a little bit of dangers, but you can see he rotated off his tower. Not too far off, though. A lot of teams, just say players, rotated right next to him. One directly, which seems towards his left. A couple more towards his right. So he has to be very, very careful where he rotates from here on out. Especially that he doesn't have any extra heals towards his name, but Malabuka has been playing a solid game throughout the day. 67 points. He entered Game 6 in 9th place. And if you're kind of looking up the leaderboard just a little bit, let's just say he gets a basic 20-point game. If the people in front of him don't have any impressive performances, that'll bump him into the top 5.
Wow. That's huge. That's huge for Malabuka, and I don't put it past him. I honestly think he's going to get a much bigger game than 20 points as well, because as we've mentioned so many times throughout today, he's one of the most experienced players, if not the most experienced player in the lobby when it comes to Fortnite competitive, played on the biggest stages in front of the biggest crowds. And he will be competing later on this year as well, in the biggest competition as well in the game. So lots of exciting stuff. And even in Zero Build here today, the biggest Zero Build competition this season, he's just performing at a decently high level, but he'll want more. I know what he's like. He won't be happy with a top 10. He wants a top 5. He wants a top 3. Realistically, he wants to win it all.
You know, especially when you come this close. You got to think to yourself, you didn't get this far just to get this far. You want to walk home with $3,000. You want to walk home with the bragging rights as the EU Zero Build PlayStation Cup champion. I like Pixoski here. He's not biting off more than he can chew in any scenario, just holding his ground. Like we talked about, top 40 would get him enough points to surpass Max. It's just about staying alive from there on out because Crooking is hot on your heels. Sad thing is, if Crooking goes down, that gap opens even more so for him to kind of be that champion of it all, as Crooking does have that med miss. So the HP doesn't worry me too much, especially since he's just a hop, skip, and a jump away from zone itself. Yeah,
he'll be able to get there. These Slurp Flowers as well be of use to Crooking. Able to heal his way back up. They're not going to regenerate inside of the storm, so there's no point in sticking around. Get your way inside of that safe zone and inside of the safety of a bush for now. How long that safety is going to last, we'll have to wait and see. But he just has the solid loadout to go through this game. Pixoski, who seemingly has just been on this hill the whole game. He's been making it his own. He's been decorating the area with a bush or so and ensuring that he's going to have the best chance at finding success in this game, which is of utmost importance to him now that Max has gone down early. Troll King getting absolutely beamed down to almost 1 HP. Gonna have to try and connect with a shot. Hits his own bunker as Smithies is on the other side of this door. Who's gonna knock first? Who's gonna open the door first for Troll King? He sat inside this bush. He has to try and heal up, or he's gonna have to try and hit a big shot. He's got to do one of the two because this is a dangerous situation for him.
I think that was a blessing in disguise for Troll King, because as soon as he came in to try to take down Troll King, Needix on the other side saw him in the open and began to put down shots, which made him disengage from the fight overall. Obviously, he couldn't get shots on the Troll King, so the only target that he had was a little bit of a blessing. That's going to allow for Troll King to survive even longer in this game and try to hold on to his top 5 position on the leaderboard. As Rift Island, you see a lot of our usual suspects that would go towards the top of Rift Island not really going for it this time around. It's too much of a risk for some. You can even see the forecast tower towards the north not being captured either. A lot of players just being really, really passive in this game as compared to the last 5.
Yeah, nobody wants to take any risks. I think we're seeing a big split here. We're seeing players that do want to take risks lower on down the leaderboard, getting involved in those fights, getting aggressive. But it's the players at the top of the leaderboard that aren't wanting to make a wrong step, because one wrong step could mean you stepping out of the top 5, top 3, whatever position you're in right now. Things can change so quickly, and finally Pixoski has got to take some steps towards the zone. Troll King finally goes down. It's Neatix who actually saved him earlier on, is not going to have that savior status anymore as he takes him out.
Yeah, the blessing becomes the curse. Usually when you live to survive that long, things tend to happen. As Pixoski found the old loot cache, just trying to figure out what he can get, but all of the loot, literally almost all of it, taken away. No heals, nothing for him to scavenge. But I will say, looking ahead into the future, not too many people are contesting him on the outside of the zone just yet. So another free rotation to click in. 16 players still need to go down before the next placement point does come in for Pixosophy. So for him, he realizes this isn't going to be a quick 40-meter dash. This is going to be a long race that I need to be patient for.
Yeah, he's got to be so careful. Remember, the threshold for first place when Max went down was 116 points. So one elimination for Pixovsky could put him in that spot. Storm Surge damage looking good. It won't last for very long, so he hasn't got to worry about that too much. But again, he's in a good position. He's looking good. Skyjump also looking good. All the way up on top of this position right now. Absolutely beaming some of the players down below. That other player doesn't stand a chance. And it's Connor who does fall victim to the aim of Skyjump. And the aim for Skyjump right now is just to try and gather as many points as possible. How many eliminations can he get? How much of the disruption can he cause? Because he wants to do it. He wants to try and get eliminations, but match it with the placement. He has a sort of a balancing act of a game right now, and it's all about decision making.
And just looking at the mini-map right now, there's literally somebody on the lower part of the mountain that he's at right now. Just kind of hiding, buying their time. Big Book's bomb going down. It does look like Skyjump either wants to have a little bit of safety if he goes for it, or just kind of cover up the loot, not allow it to go to anybody else. Really outside of the box thinking here. But it is going to be the first of the two choices. Cover up the loot, make it a little bit safer for him to go for. And that's going to be a huge upgrade from no mobility to some mobility. You see the sticky launcher as well, but with only one shot in that sticky launcher and maybe a couple to be reloaded afterwards, I'm not sure it's going to be really, really valuable to Skyjump in this position. But as soon as he left the high ground, somebody instantly stole it away from him.
Yeah, that's the danger of this lobby. You give up a position, you are giving up that position. You're not just giving it up for the moment, you're giving it up forever. So for Skyjump right there, he had to make that decision and does, I think, make the right decision. Pixovsky actually spraying out of this bush. That could be the wrong decision, but no, he does have the bunker. So I'm not concerned right now. If he does get beamed, he can chuck that down, but he only has one, Jacob. This could be the start of the end for Pixovsky.
And you can kind of see that only 4 slap splashes, about 60 HP. So even as it stands now, he's not going to get back up to tip-top shape. But Skyjump goes down. It just goes to show that the loot wasn't worth it, especially what he had on him. But I can understand the need for greed in some situations, but there's still so much on the line. Zosty's a bot.
Wow.
The NPC is just...
I thought it was the NPC. I thought it was a player.
Yeah, no, it was definitely the NPC. That's okay. How they knew he was in the bush.
Jeez.
But that player up there, let me tell you, that's not an NPC. That's just hungry to somebody that wants to take advantage. He shockwaves towards that loot. We do know they drop a slurp juice that he's trying to steal away. Grabs the key for the forecast tower as well. This could be something that bites him in the end. Actually doesn't grab it over. I was going to say that gives away his position through and through.
Is he going to go for it? He might just go for that. You know, that could win him the game.
Good. We've seen it happen before.
No. He's down.
No.
He's out.
115. He doesn't even overtake first. He doesn't get into the top 40. So first place is still being held at 116 by Max. Crooked goes down as well. That might have solidified it for Max. The next on the list, I think, is Leox at 83 points. He needs a monster game here.
Wow, we are now looking at the only remaining player potentially that could steal away first place. I can hear the screams from Max from my house, wherever he is right now. He's going to be overjoyed. Pixovsky, the complete opposite. Now all eyes on Leox. Can he pull something out the bag right here? He certainly has the loot to do it. It would be an absolutely incredible last game if he can do it. And of course, we've seen him do it before. We've seen him have some crazy games, of course. We haven't seen him get a victory royale yet. So what a time to do it, Jacob, in the last game to win the tournament.
Yeah, he's definitely going to have to start getting aggressive if he wants to make a shot at that crown at the end. Winning the game won't be enough alone, so see how it works out for him. Malibuca not too far down, but with a couple of those players already going out, he could definitely jump up some placements. Giving a little showboat in there, emoting, letting people know if you want some, come get some. But does he know that a player's position literally right below him? Could be a sneak attack at any turn, especially if anybody else puts damage onto Malibuca.
Pretty good position from Malibuca for Marley right now. Also in a decent enough position just on the edge of zone. There's going to be so many players rotating towards this area. So his job right now is to try and suppress as much of that rotation as possible. Make sure this area is as free as possible, whilst also staying covered. He's staying under the cover of this bush. Don't want to try and draw too much attention. There's lots of other players that could be looking in the vicinity, but for Marley, he's in a good position. 62 points, so by no means on a low figure. Is it going to be enough to break into that top 5? I'll have to wait and see, but we know that someone who can break into that first place spot is Leox, currently sat in 4th place going into this game. Every single point matters. Every single elimination matters for him as he surges through this end game. He's got the loot to do it. He's set up for success. This could be the run of the century, but no, gets beamed. Luckily has the protection of a bush. Squeaks looking to try and do the same as well. Trying to regress onto one of the other players next door. Has, of course, got plenty of bunkers as well, as he does get the zone, so he's able to just fortify his base and make sure that there's no other noisy neighbors nearby. He's looking good so far, though, with the slurp juice, and this is how the lobby looks. This is the landscape of the land. So many players have to rotate in from that north side.
About 9 of them are currently in towards the zone, so you're right. 20 players still have a rotation to go. Definitely not going to be an easy one. Toxic tryhard trying to finish off strong. Malibuka, same can be said for him. He's one of the players in this lobby that has to rotate. Luckily, he does have 4 shockwaves, so it's not going to be too tough of a rotation for him. It just all depends on how he wants to start it overall. Go quick to the shockwaves or try to run on foot. Try to save some of the shockwaves from there. Does look like he's just going straight to try to get in towards zone, especially with the roaming redeploy. I gotta agree with Malibuka on this one. A perfect rotation, because all it takes is one, and he found his way in towards zone. And he has that bunker there to try to find a little bit of safety. Player position down below. They know exactly where Malibuka is at. But instead of going and hiding towards the bottom, he tries to go ahead and makes a play for a little bit more elevation.
Leox, though, also hiding below the bunker, trying to use as much of that as possible. Spraying at another player, gets the elimination right there. He does. There's his first huge elimination. Could it set him up for success? Another one onto Leo Mbappe. Huge shots from Leox. He's not here to take part. He's here to take over.
That's exactly what you want to have, that confidence to get the elimination. Sadie on the other side. You can see the first of the bunkers going down. Leox just playing patient. Probably thinking maybe he didn't see me, maybe they got eliminated by somebody else. There could be a chance to find another elimination, because the win alone for him is not going to be enough for him to overtake that first place spot. So it's great to see him knowing his position on that leaderboard and how he's going to achieve his end goal.
Malibuka, his goal is to try and maximize this game as well. 2 eliminations also to his name. No heals, no protection, having to rely on those shockwaves. But of course, he does have that roaming redeploy. Toxic tryhard, taking out another player. Huge elimination for him, getting him a massive refresh. 1 bunker is going to be huge for this next rotation. He gets the refresh. He has the pit stop of that other player and can actually get the loot that's going to help him out on this next rotation. Unfortunately, he's not being helped by so much of the damage that's happening from the other side of the map. A panic shockwave sends him flying. Leox, though, a less than panic shockwave, getting to the front side of zone, has 2 bunkers still to his name, and is going to use 1 just to play on this edge of the zone. I think he's just about inside of the storm right now, so he might have to rotate in a little bit more. Toxic tryhard getting beamed by another one of our players on the backside of zone, trying to go for some damage shots. Not going to happen as Alex takes him out.
Yeah, everybody's beginning to fall rather quickly. Leo knows that he has to go ahead and try to make a play here. He's at the edge of the zone. A couple shots going to be fired, and he gets another elimination. Slurp Juice is still going to be active. Shockwave trying to gain some elevation, but falls right back on down. Luckily for him, that Slurp Juice is still popped, but Malibuka trying to be the first one there. Into the top 6 we go. Who's going to come out on top?
Leox making it his game right now, getting eliminations. He's used his final bunker. Now he's going to have to resort to playing the low grounds. The player that opens up the door, but it opens it up to his elimination. As Leox now, his game is over. The dream is over. But for Malibuka, the dream's still alive. But for how much longer?
Yep, he's in the top 2 situation. Tries to go to the front side of zone. And then Zenku with 5 eliminations that steals away the game right out of the hands from Malibuka, trying to make that cheeky play with the brighter redeploy. But I think throughout the course of that game, Mini, I think we know who won.
That was just an incredible endgame. It was over in this quick of a flash right there. We saw Malibuka trying to make his way into the game. I was like, can he make it happen? But no, it was ultimately the redeploy that actually caused him to go down. I don't think he would have made it happen there at the end, but he did very, very well to get 2nd place, I believe it was there. What a solid game. And we saw so many storylines in that game, Jacob, develop. We saw some of our top tier players that didn't actually perform as well. We saw Max going down early. We saw Pixovsky going down not long after. The door to first place looked wide open. Is it still? I don't know.
Yeah, you got to imagine, did Crookings get enough points before he went down as well? We saw Pizowski just 1 point shy of overtaking that first place spot, but at least in theory, he held on to his position if nobody else was able to get enough to pass him. But we talk about it. There's still more and more money up for grabs as you go down that leaderboard. So even though some of these players may not have a chance at first, if I went from $100 to $1,000, I would be just as happy.
definitely very happy. These guys are winners. They'll want to win the tournament, but of course, a little bit of extra cash for your troubles is not too bad at all. And this was the play here from Zenku that actually took out Malibuka. Beautiful shot there at the end. We didn't get to see it from that perspective, but it just shows how great of a player he is when it comes to the aim. But let's take a little look at our game winners from throughout the day. Of course, game number 1, we kick things off. What a performance, a 10 elimination victory from Toxic Tryhard. A great game from him.
Yeah, and you saw trolling, crooking, all of these guys really pick up the pace. Game number 1 is kind of a little bit feeler. You just download your opponent, figure out how they're playing, and then you adjust your game plan accordingly. And I think a lot of these teams, even if they didn't get a VR, they did more than enough to adjust their game plan to get towards the top half of that leaderboard. It starts at 3,000, begins to diminish from there for each and every placement. So I think a lot of these players, even though if they didn't win, they're still pretty happy with their end result.
Yeah, definitely. I know what you guys at home are wanting. I know what I'm wanting. I know what you're wanting as well, Jacob. I want to see that leaderboard of the day. I want to see the overall standings, but we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to look at it from bottom to top. So we're seeing
I got hoodwinked.
I'm having to make you wait. That's how it is. You gotta work for it, you know, you gotta wait. You gotta build up the anticipation, but we get to see some of our players. They didn't quite have the day that they would have liked today, Jacob. I'm sure for them it's just a stepping stone in their success in the future.
Yeah, they at least get, you know, $100 at the very, very minimum for their efforts here throughout the day. And you're kind of seeing those points jump up. 40 points for 41st. Pophead was able to capture that. You see Gomex with 10 eliminations as well. Some players not being able to find that balance between placing high and overall eliminations. But let me hit a drum roll, please. Who is walking away with our top spot, the champion of the EU Zero Build PlayStation Cup final?
Who's it going to be? I want to see. Let's give me the next page. I want to see. I'm looking at the left side. It is indeed Z-Max FN1 coming out on top. There was that 1 point that made the difference. Pixovsky had it all in his hands. He had the game to play, but unfortunately fell down early. Great game, though, from Leox, who pushed his way up the leaderboard into 3rd place. And Malibuka there, Jacob. 4th place for him. Great performance.
Yeah, he started in 9th place, went up to 4th. Those are the moments that I'm talking about. Even though mathematically, for some of these players, that 1st place was out of reach, it's all about the money. And let me tell you, they definitely delivered to themselves at the very end. And they delivered to me. They put on an exciting show.
Yeah, what a great show. I mean, what a performance from some of our top teams and some of our talent that did, of course, perform unbelievably well. Definitely go check out everyone that did take part today. And, of course, if you want to take part in some tournaments yourself, then make sure to sign up and get involved at compete.playstation.com. If you want to take part in some of these tournaments, of course, definitely have a little look on there. It's not even just Fortnite. There's plenty of other events that you can check out there, too. And, of course, you might need some teammates for those tournaments. You might need to make some new friends as well. If you want to, then check out the PlayStation Tournament Discord server. You can see the QR code on the screen right now. Definitely go check that out. I'll be there. Jacob, I'm sure, will be there as well. You can hang out and make some friends in there, like-minded people.
Yeah, I'm looking for some people, like, you know, have some fun, vibe out, play some ranked, or maybe even compete in the next one of these tournaments if it is changing from solos to duos. And because I don't know how I would fare in a solo competition. Let me tell you, I'd probably be getting nervous. I'm probably the one shockwaving left, right, and center just to try to survive.
Yeah, I'd be first on the leaderboard if you were looking upside down. That's where I'd be. It wouldn't quite go as well for me, but it was a great show overall today. A great performance from some of our top players. Of course, we saw some of the newer talent that we haven't really seen too much of rising through, and it's great because this is not the end of the PlayStation Cup action. There's plenty more to come as well. Of course, we have the NA Zero Build action going on tonight, and of course, we have to talk about the Show 23 Championship Series. Now, of course, it's underway. The last round of qualifiers is on September the 16th, but if you don't make it through there, you don't have to worry because the wildcard qualifier is on September the 22nd through 24th, and you can see it right there, Jacob. The grand final in October the 1st. You can watch that on the SDS, Twitch, and YouTube. You can learn more about that at mlb.show/6988B if you want to learn more. B7 if you want to learn more about that, I should say. So very exciting stuff coming up. Lots of exciting tournaments. But for me, Jacob, I have had a great day today. I've had an enjoyable day. Summarize me the day. Have you enjoyed it? Have you enjoyed the Fortnite action you've seen?
No, I definitely did. I thought in the beginning when Troll King and Try Hard were actually performing, playing very aggressive, I was thinking, man, they're going to be able to walk away with this. A high number of eliminations and a game victory. But as the day went on, it became more about consistency than just having a big pop-off game. And I think Max proved that. 5 consistent games throughout the day. He slipped up big in that 6th and final game. He was probably biting his nails, watching it, nervous on the edge of his seat. But he was able to prevail due to his success early on in the tournament. And I think that has been the trend throughout this entire PlayStation Cup finals. And I think that's going to continue to be the trend when it comes to solos.
Yeah, that's definitely right. We saw so much action going down, so many different game winners as well. And what I really like to see was just this solo gameplay. We don't get to see too much from solos, particularly in zero build. And that's what we got to see. We got to see some crazy plays from all of our players. And as I mentioned, the PlayStation Cup experience, the PlayStation Cup is going on this weekend as well, of course. For those that want to watch the finals, we're going to be doing the NA-based finals tomorrow, of course, for builds. And of course, there's, an EU builds version as well as an NA zero build as well. So you can see that, the PlayStation Cup NA version. You can join myself and Jacob there at 1:30 PT tomorrow. So make sure to be there if you want to watch some more NA Fortnite action. It's been an absolute blast casting alongside with you, Jacob, today, as per usual, as it always is. Have you got any closing words?
I mean, just happy to be here. PlayStation just putting on one great show after another, from EU to NA, and then being able to cast with you. It's always been a pleasure. You know as well as I do. We go way, way back to one of our first casts before I feel like either one of us were on that FNCS broadcast, kind of like brothers to the end.
Yeah, that's definitely right. But of course, just before we do sign off, we have to give a massive shout out to ZMaxFN1, our winner, the champion of the PlayStation Cup EU Zero build. What a player, what a performance. He was just so consistent throughout the day, Jacob. He's just fantastic, and I'm expecting to see more from him in the future.
No, I definitely am. And honestly, if I don't, I'm going to figure out where he's at and get his opinions on a lot of the action, because he probably does have a great amount of insight overall.
Yeah, definitely. It's been an absolute pleasure having you guys here. Thank you all for watching the PlayStation EU Zero Build competition. We'll be back tomorrow with some NA build action as well, so don't go anywhere for that. But thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all tomorrow for another one.